Hello, welcome back to the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, left-wing podcast on politics, media, current events, news, some humor, some tragedy, some statistics. You take your pick. I'm Alex.
I'm Aiden.
Well, we pick actually. They don't pick.
That's
I'm
true.
Jason.
It was the royal you. Y'all can suffer, I guess.
Like the Patreon fields peasants.
Yeah, give us our tithe. Speaking of tithes, the first section I have planned for us is called God and Friends.
Oh,
Interesting.
God has been busy, apparently.
are we introducing the God cinematic universe?
Yeah, exactly. New and God things. From New York Times, Pope Francis sent me a letter. It gives me hope as a gay Catholic.
Did he read the letter yet? Or he's just being optimistic?
No, it's just the receiving.
I've been acknowledged.
Yeah. It's like it's a mint in box. The letter remains sealed forever.
I feel very bad for people like this.
Yeah.
These are really tragic cases.
Yeah, it very much feels like a Stockholm syndrome case. I mean, maybe that's a bit too judgmental, because it's I'm sure that many people have local churches and communities that they genuinely have a fondness for, and the people there like them, but there's still the looming truth that the broader institution and other people of your same faith outside of your community will treat you as less than the person. And that's got to be really, really hurtful and terrible to live with. But
I have this letter from the Pope.
Yeah, but I'm sure if when they turn on you, when they threaten to stone you or whatever, you can hold up your missive and it will be a holy shield, or at least I hope that for you, tragic Catholic.
Does the Catholic Church treat the popes like presidents? Like once Francis dies and like the Trump Pope takes over, he undoes all the executive orders from Francis.
Well, that's what Francis already has done to Ratzenberg.
And this letter becomes null and void. Yeah,
but Benedict was a much more reactionary pope, and Francis was just like, what if we weren't doing that anymore? Like that's
So
that is
what
the
do
whole
they?
point.
Does they think God changed his mind?
Look, God goes through phases. He was in kind of an
it
emo
happened
phase.
To coincide with various different old Italian men.
Yeah, he was in like an emo phase, and he's like, let's get this, Nazi youth reactionary psychopath in there for a while, and then as a prank I'll have him resign while still alive, which almost never happens, and then we'll get this supposedly like liberal left-leaning pope in there who'll promise a million things and then never deliver on any of them, just like Obama.
And then I'll burn that giant cathedral in France, and the internet will love it.
Wait, he was alive? I thought he was forced to resign because he was undead.
Yeah, exactly. The Dark Lords of the Vatican. Yeah, he's very much a Palpatine figure. He lives on the Palatine Hill, but
is there like an acknowledgement at all that, like, because the answer has to be that from the current Pope's perspective, that the last one like got things wrong.
Yeah, there is actually an answer. It's just very boring and soft.
They just do the I apologize.
The answer, for those who are curious as to the theosophy and theodicies of the Catholic Church, is the Pope is not actually infallible 99.9% of the time. They only invoke papal infallibility on like a few very specific sentences that they say now and then. So the implication is that the Pope is human, infallible like anyone else. Their policies and politics can be their own.
Then why do you have a Pope?
Because someone has to run the Christian world as far as they're concerned. They understand it to be a office.
Does modern Christendom concede that it's a political position?
Yes. Yeah, they do. Even the Catholic Church, which says like periodically the Pope phones up God and gets a firm answer, the rest of the time the Pope is fallible, and they kind of accept that the Pope is fallible.
Does the Pope just not want to be nosy? He doesn't want to, overstay his welcome? He doesn't want to bother God every day with a text?
There's no practical reason why the Pope would ever just guess when he could call God when that's been established.
Right, if it's phone a friend and you're on the $1 million question, just call God. Just solve it.
The Pope is constantly on $1 million questions. It's just like 50-50. Like they don't go for the obvious.
Well, we asked the audience.
Yeah.
And the audience said, we're not supportive of you, gay Catholic. I'm sorry.
It's like a collect call to heaven, and it's just like super expensive. He doesn't want to have to pay it.
Doesn't have enough rollover. Maybe.
Yeah, because the problem is the Catholic Church doesn't have enough money. Yeah.
Yeah, God doesn't have enough money. He doesn't have any physical coin. Yeah, so it's a ridiculous.
No, God loves crypto.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
But yeah, like
God invented the blockchain and loves it.
This to me is actually even crueler in the era of Francis than it was under the more reactionary, like obviously reactionary popes, because Francis genuinely seems to hold more progressive views on most of these issues than any previous pope. However,
I don't know if
clearly,
John Paul.
Oh yeah, but John Paul was like a straight down the middle moderate. It was just that everyone around him was such a reactionary.
But he was chill.
But here's the difference: John Paul did
cool.
things. John Paul actually accomplished some things, and even his predecessors that weren't as nominally as left as Francis accomplished things at like the various Vatican summits of the 20th century.
The Obama of
that would be my argument. He's on paper should have been the best pope for non-Christians, for non-Catholics, for the LGBT community, etc., based on the stuff he said, and so much so that other bishops and stuff were terrified of him becoming pope. They thought he was going to like ruin the church.
So he's pre-neutered.
But the reality is, yeah, he's one person in a massive institution. And he's not willing to put his neck out there at like 80 years old to get into a war with the entire church over these issues. So ultimately, everything that he writes is like, I sure wish I could do something about this. It's like, you're the Pope. Just say it. And say it's godly, divinely true.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. When can they invoke the God truth?
When they choose to. When they can release like a papal bull that basically says, no, this came from God. It's just no historical pope has done that too frequently because it sort of diminishes the significance.
Yeah, it's like too many titles in MMA. I get it.
Yeah.
How quickly would the Pope get assassinated? If he said, guys, it's Christmas, I called up God, he said, I'm over the whole worship thing. We can give it up.
Worship? Are you talking about like religion itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be excommunicated by his own church in like 5 minutes. They'd put an anti-pope in there and call him the real pope.
But he said God said it.
100 times happened in medieval
history.
What
are you
gonna do? Yeah. So basically, what would be extremely frustrating to me if I was in this situation is you finally get the guy who says he's going to make essentially gay people part of the church in a more meaningful, complete way, without condemning them, without making them reject their identity, without shaming them, without putting them on a guilt trip. And the best he could do is write you a letter that's like, I'm so sorry. We do better, us.
We appreciate your.
It's like time's up. It's like, okay, but then do something. Like, I don't actually doubt Francis's politics, because even when it had like would only harm his chances of becoming pope, he kept saying this kind of shit. However, he's not doing it. He's not able to. He's either not able or not willing to take the risks and actions needed to, for instance, make homosexuality not a sin. Like that's all you have to do. Just say like it's not a sin. It's just you can't help it. It's a fact of life.
This is what I was suggesting with the last thing. What is third rail that even a pope claiming he has the word of God can't?
He doesn't want to lose hundreds of millions of reactionary Catholics by saying that homosexuality is not a sin. That's it. And the rest of the church especially doesn't want to lose.
This is what I'm trying to say. Are those Catholics also so black-pilled as to say that their faith is only based on a couple conservative beliefs?
They won't say it, but that's true.
Like here's what I'm saying. The Republican Party has a base of voters. So too does the Democratic Party. But those votes are contingent on things. Republicans will stop being Republicans if the Republican Party stops doing what they want for them. But religion's supposed to be different. If I believe something is true, just because I don't like it or it's inconvenient doesn't change my belief. If the Catholic Church says being gay is not a problem anymore, I don't suddenly I don't unbelieve Catholicism if I believe in God. It's not a political affiliation. It's a belief.
It's both though, right? Because like the entire premise of Protestantism is people who were Catholics until they realized there were some temporal issues with the administration of the church.
But that would be you become a different kind of Christian.
Yeah, but that's what the church is afraid of. They've been hemorrhaging membership more than any other faith. Like the Catholic Church has been shrinking dramatically for decades. And I think they're terrified to lose any more people, even though, ironically, the only way to retain any sort of population is to get fucking with the times.
Right, but cowarding out is actually just going to keep them shrinking.
Yeah, I've been tremendously disappointed in myself with Francis doing exactly what I knew he would do, which is to just coward out every time. But, like, if you were a gay Catholic, like, your only hope is this, and he's not doing it. So
no, your hope is abandon your faith.
Yeah, well, to reconcile Catholicism with homosexuality.
Ain't happening.
Yeah, it's not happening.
It can't be patched.
He even if he had the will, he does not have the power. If he had the power, he does not have the will. There's no version in which even the most left leaning, to what extent you can be, Pope is going to get this done. So you got to either say, I'm done waiting for this bullshit. I'm done with a church that tells me I'm not a full human. I'm out. Or you almost have to like unionize against the church and be like, we're going to take the entire fucking more progressive wing of Catholics out of the church and threaten to leave, just like the reactionaries already threatened to leave, until you make this change, because it's a political institution at the end of the day.
But the problem is the premise is all imaginary.
Yes, but it's imaginary, but very important to a huge number of people. So
a dwindling number.
I mean, money's imaginary. We still use it. Like, it's just kind of what we. It's just
but we all agree on it. We don't all agree on religion.
They're useful fictions in the way that they hold society together in various ways. I mean, I personally don't think we need it at all, but huge numbers of people, it's very important. And if you're one of those people and you have like otherwise good beliefs, but you've been sort of raised in this and you've been tortured your whole life because your identity doesn't fit some archaic, corrupt institution's definition of humanity, this is very cruel and immiserating.
Yeah. So if we happen to have any Catholic viewers or any religious viewers who feel ever like they're conflicted with their own personal identities, or maybe just values with what the larger institution tells them, obviously we're not on the same boat as you, but I hope this is gives you some solace in the very clear unwrapping of how political the Catholic Church is, in the way that it dramatically swings from one way to another, just based upon who happens to follow up the white smoke. So make what you want of your faith. You know?
This is a one-to-one policy position, like when Obama said whether I'm for or against gay marriage. They're one and the same thing. Just because one you think is divine is like whether being gay is right or wrong, versus one is just legalese and whether they can legally get the same tax protections and loans that married people get. It's still the same premise. It's still a policy position.
And again, while I will happily grant that I'm a secular atheist and I normally would not speak to divine matters, even by the Christian faith's own teachings, one of these things, which is to say human beings, is God created, and the other is the Catholic Church, which is man created. So which of those is more important? Because I'm pretty sure that human beings, made as they are closer to whatever the description is of God's will than an institution built out of politics and money and power.
The problem is the religion says we're intrinsically sinful and bad.
Yeah, well, sure,
only
but
can be good through Jesus.
The point I'm trying to make is if you're a conflicted, person with a religious identity clashing with a persecuted minoritarian identity, you don't choose either of these things, right? Like you're born into whatever religion usually your family or community is, and you're born with whatever gender preferences or gender identities or ethnic background that you are, right? Like, you're not picking these things, and unless you're arguing that God made a mistake, then you're probably supposed to be whatever this thing is according to the doctrines of your own faith. The
argument is God did this to test you, to fuck you over for
that's insane cruelty.
That's the actual argument. It's a theological argument.
Yeah. Well, I don't think everyone's Job, but I'm just saying, have some confidence that a political institution of the church is not more important than your basic humanity. You don't need to wait for the letter.
I think I can agree with that.
Anyway, we've heard from the failure of the religious left. Now let's listen to the supposed success of the sort of liberal religious left, whatever the fuck that means. Another baffling New York Times headline: meet an ecologist who works for God, parentheses, and against lawns.
Huh?
What?
Great question.
My brain just melted.
Lawns, famous enemy of God.
This is a crusader against pollution.
Okay.
An ecologist, someone who studies like the ground?
No, like nature and the environment.
Yeah, well, but that's what I mean. Like,
I thought you were saying like geologist or something.
I don't even care to give analysis.
You don't enjoy this? You don't enjoy this one?
It's so good. It's confusing from a number of reasons, but the two main ones are, of course, the end in parentheses and against lawns, as if that's an understandable conflict. And two is, it feels like it's trying to, it's operating upon the presumption that being an ecologist is incompatible with being religious, which I feel like I get it when people were like really surprised that the head of the Genome Project was a religious person, because like that's on the,
Yeah, and he is the worst reason of all time for why he became religious.
Yeah, that's extremely frustrating and all other issue, but I hear you.
yeah,
Francis, I can't remember his name.
but like
Sir Francis something.
as far as I know, ecology doesn't often work with like microbiology, or especially not like archaeology, which seems to be the main level of conflict with religion. So I don't know. I'm my mind is spinning out of control trying to imagine what the framing of this article is supposed to be.
I mean,
Francis Collins.
the hard sciences definitely have an enormously disproportionate number of secularists compared to some other fields, especially at the higher levels of education. So I'm not surprised myself that most ecologists would be like, wait, what? You're like divinely inspired to do this mission. On the other hand, ecology in particular in this like time of global warming and climate catastrophe has taken on an almost like messianic theological undertone of like apocalypse and the end of the world.
Because it's making moral claims.
Yeah, like
And those are
mankind's
not often associated with science, even though I think they should be.
Mankind's sins and hubris. We dug too greedily and too deep.
Yeah, the garden has been burned.
Yeah, like we've literally done some sort of biblical Tower of Babel or like damaging the garden type thing, is what it almost reads like to a layman about the destruction of the environment and the ruin that it will now reap upon humanity. So I think if you're someone who's concerned about the survival of the world and humanity on the world, and have any kind of religious background, those things could be synergistic.
I cracked the code. Cracked the code.
Hmm?
New York Times, fuck you. But what you're saying is, this ecologist is saying one of the biggest contributors to pollution is people mowing their lawns.
Yeah.
And that's why they're rallying against lawns as a concept, and the like white picket fence and suburbia of what Americans imagine what it means to be American.
Oh yeah, almost certainly.
Oh God.
Because the American suburban lifestyle has an enormous amount of resource expenditure for no real reason. Like using gasoline-powered mowers to mow a 20-foot wide lawn is completely pointless and insane. Like there's no reason to be doing that. And so there's a huge amount of expenditure on sprinklers and gasoline and all the conveniences that we're used to of driving, one person driving an SUV around everywhere for no reason in suburbia. Like it's just the suburban lifestyle is extremely wasteful with resources, especially from like a green perspective. So I'm sure that's their thrust of their argument and article there, especially because it gives the New York Times a chance to scold the liberals who read it, who mostly live in suburbia and the metropolitan area.
Yeah, and they love self-lashing.
Right.
I think it's probably even more kind of like pedantic, in that instead of like acknowledging the wastefulness, they're instead like saying that instead of just having like a blank slate of a lawn, everyone should be trying to turn their lawn into like a curated microcosm with like a compost pile.
Yeah, everyone composts and shit in your lawn.
A diverse flower bed that attracts certain fauna that are excluded in residential areas. That's my guess, because that seems even more like even more kind of niche, unreasonable complaint.
I'd like to take a second to shit on this trend of meet X, who does X thing, Y thing that you're not expecting. Stop it with this shit. We're all tired of it. We don't need to meet some fucking weirdo. Just tell us a news story. Just give us the news.
I hate that a decade ago it was like these kinds of articles were the weird fringe ones that sounded like advertisements, and now they're almost all media. Like the BuzzFeedification of the internet is really upsetting. Like it was already present, but now it's everything. I don't know why they're all phrased like we're imbeciles. But yeah, underplaying the intelligence of your audience is a common feature, despite the fact that a lot of these are like boutique publications that already supposedly print articles mostly for an educated readership.
I'm not sure it's underplaying your intelligence. It's just like
it's like really handholdy.
It's trying to surprise. It's trying to excite you. It's like I'm not reading news to get excited. I'm reading news to get informed.
Yeah.
And but it's trying to give, at least in the New York Times and many other similar publications cases, it's trying to give you like a small talk.
Right. It's like, have you heard the latest gossip? Have you heard this cool trend? It's like you're getting coffee with your girlfriends. No.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yes, me and my partner decided to turn our flower bed into a rotting pile of grubs after we read this New York Times article. No, haven't you done that yet?
After they realized that their small picket white fence plot was actually a tabula rasa for the Garden of Eden, just waiting to be converted.
It's going to be quite well fertilized because it's built upon an Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
How much you want to bet that even the headline lies about this works for God thing? I bet the interviewer just asked you, like, "Oh, are you religious?" Because most scientists aren't. They're like, "Yeah, I'm religious," and they're like, "Aha! They
It's not a
work
mission
for
from
God."
God.
That would be very funny, but if that's the case, then this is even more idiotic than it seems. Like,
It's New York Times.
yeah, but it has to be a central part of the thing, right?
No,
Like,
it
they have to
doesn't.
talk about that.
That
at
was-
It doesn't have to be at all.
That'd be so funny.
all. Oh God.
They could just be lying.
Or it's just like a Fiddler on the Roof thing. Like, there's a lot of God references, but not a lot of actual religion.
It
It just
just-
like talks to God a lot, but like nothing actually
that'd be
goes
funny.
down between them.
She's Jewish,
Yeah, exactly.
and they're interviewing her like during Hanukkah.
Yeah.
By the way, happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Yeah.
I think we're on day, I don't know, like 5 or
Yes,
something.
I ended global warming, and with a little compost here, like something like that. They're doing like Cantor kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a statue of Saint Nick in their garden. They're like,
Yeah.
this person's a zealot.
I will say, as a secularist, I really love the songs in that musical. So there's a few things that work out
Yeah.
for
The
you.
only redeeming quality of any religion in the past has been the culture and art spawned from it. However, religion is not singularly and solely responsible for that culture and art. It
Right.
just happens to coincide with it.
A hard stance, but I don't necessarily disagree. I think also the happiness that it can bring people, but it's also
Nah, it's all false.
it's mirrored with sadness, so it's kind of hard to.
It being, yeah, that's another
It's
discussion.
absolutely hollow and fake happiness.
Well, let's talk about something that's unambiguously hollow and fake happiness in
good.
our last of our religious articles from where's this one? The Daily Beast. Plumber finds thousands of cash
Yes, the song
envelopes
is... No, I was...
stuffed inside toilet wall at Joel Osteen's megachurch.
Fuck, I was going to use this one!
That's
God
fine.
damn it.
That's how the show works. We're
wanted it.
alike. We're talking about it no matter what. What does it matter who presents
My
it?
cookie!
Yeah, but now we can't guess it for 600 or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, now you don't have my insane contraption, like my Rube Goldberg system of listening to my articles.
Uh-huh.
I love this one. I thought this was great.
Yeah. Least confusing, least surprising article so far.
Yeah.
Do they get to did they get to keep it, I wonder?
No, it just kind of revealed that Joel Osteen had hidden like literally $600,000 of like illicit cash.
This
in his
dude
church.
is so rich. Why is he acting like he's Pablo Escobar?
Yeah.
What
Use
the
a,
fuck?
use a
Your
Swiss
church,
bank.
you're tax exempt. You could just throw that cash into the audience and they'd willingly give it back to you. The fact that he's
Yeah.
hiding it like he's Jay-Z on the street still selling crack
Yeah.
is mind-boggling.
There's a very strong Breaking Bad vibe to this to me. There's literally like duffel bags full of cash in the desert.
Right, this
type
is
situation.
Ozark. What the fuck? Come on.
Yeah. I have no idea why this dude, who is universally beloved by his own flock, despite being Satan himself, is acting as though he might have his shit taken away at any moment. Like, is he afraid that like a lawsuit is going to legitimately determine that he's a con artist
Well,
and
exactly.
freeze his assets or something?
Exactly. This is the kind of behavior of someone who knows the feds are cracking down
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Like they're going to treat him like he's Afghanistan. They're just going to freeze his assets and seize him. Like,
But I bet the twist is, because it's articles already written about it, obviously there's like a lot of information already. I bet Osteen's going to let him keep it and be like, it's a gift of God. We winning the lottery. This is the blessings that come when you come to my church.
Take your
That's what I
toilet
bet's gonna
money.
happen.
he's going to give him like $10. He's going to be like, hey, here's the finder's fee. Shut the fuck up about this. There's no Joel Osteen has never done a charitable fucking act in his life.
No, I'm
These
saying
kinds of
he was
people,
to avoid like legal scrutiny.
not even that. Like even when it would cost him nothing, like the hurricanes blasting its way through
I'm
Texas,
not letting people.
and it's like, oh, maybe people could shelter in these gigantic like sticks in the eye of God that are your mega churches, and he's like, no, die. It literally, he might as well have posted like instead of Luther's theses, he posts a notice on the door that just says "die," because he watched as people
die trash.
like massacred.
It's the Baby Yoda meme of like where the people subtitle over images of him like with like really
Yeah.
mean things.
Yeah.
Like, look,
Die trash.
I've been pretty critical of the Catholic Church and other main streaming religious institutions before, but like Joel Osteen and his ilk are some of the most repugnant humans on earth. Like they take it to the next level of like obviously venal, self-serving cruelty in a way that's like it's almost like too obvious to the point that some people are thinking they're literally the Antichrist. like smiling grotesquerie of evil in a way that's really hard to kind of describe unless you watched a video of it. Really sickening. Not surprising, but sickening.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that he decided to continue to store things locally after he was forced to let people into his church a couple of times.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the unwashed mass is a bit too close to his hard-earned lucre.
It's so wild to me that this is still going on. Like this feels like a story from like the 19th century or something, where there's like a safe in the Wild West that's filled with cash from like a bank robber. Like, this is just so archaic for so many reasons. Yeah,
I can't remember his name. There's a current evangelist guy is it Jim Baker? I just can't remember his name.
Well, if you knew his name, is the rest of the point relevant?
Yes, like, how do I want to frame this? It's kind of like the crypto conversation. Maybe it's a real technology. Maybe it works. Who knows? We don't actually have the evidence in front of us. We don't know the science well enough to understand it. But, like, there's a reason certain things are havens for scoundrels, snake oil salesmen, con artists. It should not be surprising to anyone, even if you are genuinely religious, that religion is a place for con artists to congregate. And Joel Osteen is just one of these many. And there's been a gigantic track record of so many American televangelists and just evangelists in general who are all absolute hack fraud. Many of them proven so. Many of them are like, the crazy guy who's like gay blowing dudes in the airport bathroom. Like, there's so many. When the track record's this bad, like as we talked about earlier, when the track record of the Catholic Church is this bad, how can you put any faith in this shit?
And I will point out, this is a very well-worn secular argument, but like, even if you think, okay, but my guy isn't, it's like, okay, but if the vast majority of people are not in whatever your particular denomination happens to be, so you would still have to recognize that the vast majority of these people are scammers and con artists. So this is a problem whether your particular guy happens to be corrupt or not. And the fact that whatever god or gods may exist are tolerating the mass fleecing and immiseration of humanity at the hands.
They're just loving it. They're eating it up.
I mean, these vultures of spirituality, like, are allowed to continue to feast on the carrion of our dying humanity. So, like, this is really, really grotesque, and I can't imagine a loving God would allow Joel Osteen to exist.
Yeah, two things. One, I just double back for a quick moment. I do find the concept that Alex posed very funny, that this is actually like unrelated to Joel Osteen. It's just like DB Cooper stored his stolen money here.
Yeah.
He just finally found it.
Yeah.
But two,
the last place anyone would think to look.
Yeah, exactly. Who would think there would be money in this mega church? But yeah, like, I think the litmus test, the measure is very easy. Like, I think about the church that I went to when I was growing up, and it was like a community center. People went there, they took care of your kids, they offered free education outside of school or before kids could go to school. They offered services to people who needed them. It's like, yeah, that's people are doing some good. If they're just preaching, taking their money, and then doing nothing to live up to their word, then why believe it? Whether or not it's genuine piety, if they're not living out the quote unquote message, then it's just, I think that's when it really is truly hollow, putting aside intellectual reasons.
And tragically, scumbags like this are living out their message, because their message is like, give me money and a Kenyan prince will email you. You will be wired $22 million if your initial $5,000 email deposit to Nairobi goes through. Like, every single one of them is the framing of a scam.
No. Nigerian princes are more likely to be real.
Yeah, no, really. Because this one's like, the whole prosperity gospel is just pay me and that means God will love you. It's just, the entire system is indulgences, which ironically is one of the central things that made Protestants in the first place, because they didn't like them. So the Protestants have reinvented indulgences and doubled down on them, which is one of the most grotesque ironies of history.
Time is really a flat circle.
Yeah. We're going to get Protestants too, who revolt from these assholes. Yeah, who revolt from these assholes going like, wait, this is just indulgences again. But
we're past that phase.
Yeah.
We're not in like medieval times anymore.
We may well be past all phases, as my next section discusses, which I'm going to subtitle Apocalypse Now-ish.
All right, good copyright dodge.
Yeah. in our first article from The Guardian, and this was posted in The Guardian's Society section.
Society section.
Society.
Is society coming apart?
Yes. Next question. Is the neoliberal established order non-functional? Yes. And
No, that's definitely not the question.
Cash out now. Society stocks dropping.
who? What bothers me about this one is they're writing this like they don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Like the person writing the article is just curious. Like, I've been observing collapse over the last 2 years, and I'm starting to wonder to myself, are things really as bad as they seem? It's like, yes, of course.
Usually there would be like comma or second sentence, and then it's like, not just yet because of this or something, or like, here's things to watch. Like there was no second half
thesis or something.
It's just, are we fucked? It's like the Mabibia thing. It's like, am I good? It's such a useless thing to say.
Maybe
but it's said in this the like tepid, polite way.
Yeah,
as if this is a thing that we can, solve with tax credits.
Are we right and truly buggered? Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know, Britain. I mean, your shit's coming apart for sure.
Wait,
but like,
where was
it's from The Guardian.
Oh, okay.
But still, like, there's not a lot of countries where society isn't falling apart in the wake of like a 2-year pandemic and everything politically being done wrong. Yeah. You're on the money with this one, even though it's only 4 words.
Is this the shortest article headline we've read?
Probably, because it's barely. I actually can't believe it's a complete sentence.
Yeah, this just sounds like someone.
It is though.
Completely.
I know.
Genuinely gobsmacked, like they.
Yeah.
Like they just saw something or heard something that just.
There is one excuse for writing this article. They went into a coma in 2015, and they woke up now.
Yeah, this is Austin Powers writing. Yeah. Is the society coming apart?
Are we dying from ham sandwich? I mean, like, we've all lived through these years. No one alive now who isn't conscious has observed the rapid decline. If you had a brain that could think from the year 2000 on, you've observed democracies failing in real time, markets failing in real time, massive migrant crises, massive war violence and genocides and failures, huge tectonic shifts in who runs things in the world, and people being very upset with it. Yes, it's all coming apart. Question answered.
Yeah,
good day, sir.
That's definitely not the question they're posing, though. I would bet a good sum of money on it. They're almost certainly like concerned about, I don't know, either depending on like the length of the article. If it's a short one, then it's just like some person who heard that some children of African immigrants and like a few streets away in London from where they live killed each other with knives, and they're like, society's falling apart. I don't know.
I see.
I don't know how or why. I couldn't possibly explain. But
this is why I like using psycho-conservative websites, because their headlines are way funnier.
Yeah.
Because their version of this would be, is society coming apart because Dora the Explorer's gone woke? Like, because that shit's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Big Bird killed society.
Right, because Big Bird's like fucking earning up the ass or something. Like, this is just...
Is Big Bird trans?
Right, like, exactly. Cool. Big Bird came out of the closet. But, like, this is just vanilla. It's just milquetoast. It's just white bread. Like,
yeah, because that's the question you ask when you're politely sitting on the corpse of British Empire. This is how you frame your depression. In this kind of erudite, pithy nothing.
Watch, it's over like the Queen getting old.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's actually 2 other things we haven't discussed. One is just the Queen's obvious imminent death, because she's ancient.
I'm breaking out in hives.
And the third possibility is something very literal, which is, it's written in the society section. Is this someone going like, is this section going to be closed because no one cares? like it could even be just completely broken, like just about them. It's like they're writing to their audience like, please donate. For just pennies a day, you can keep the society section of The Guardian going.
Oh, no. I just Googled it just for a little bit of context, and it is very long. They have a lot.
It's this person's brain palace collapsing.
It's a comprehensive analysis of everything going wrong.
Oh man. Yeah. What?
Is there a subtitle? Give me a morsel. Give me a hint.
Okay. There is a subtitle. Although it's so fantastic that they just chose that as the title. Despite Thatcher and Reagan's best efforts,
What?
there is and has always been such a thing as society. The question is not whether it exists, but what shape it must take in a post-pandemic world.
Oh, so this is like a left liberal writing.
I mean, it's the UK, yeah, but like
Interesting. I pictured this as like someone who thought they were above politics. But this is
no,
apparently
it's some
someone who...
25-year-old British woman being like, "Hang on, I thought I was supposed to succeed in this world. Why is everything collapsing around me?"
To be honest with you, the kind of grudge that they have against Reagan and Thatcher tells me that they're like 60.
I
maybe
skipped to the last paragraph.
It's not a grudge. It's a shitty joke. It's like, oh, get it, Republicans try to destroy the universe. Like, yeah, good one, Bill.
This is like the SNL lib like equivalent article.
Right,
for
like
yeah.
the laziest fucking conservative richest people in the world can make these jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Thatcher was a cunt. Like, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, it seems like your classic kind of opportunity to flex one's creative writing skills.
Exactly. Yeah.
And their main contention seems to be that the facsimile of Skype communication, Zoom communication, is not society, and that our time trapped inside has threatened the paradigm of what we understand to be society.
Oh well, they can't wait for the fucking singularity then, huh? Can you wait like in 50 years when brains are being uploaded to computers? When like consciousness is digitized, like, man, this isn't society anymore. We've really lost our humanity. Like, motherfucker, progress is progress, and necessity is necessity. You want us all to die from plague, like England's dealt with a couple hundred years ago, or do you want us to try and manage?
There's probably
heated.
There's probably this op-ed every single time.
When am I not heated?
Any kind of technological advancement, like. Probably when the cars were invented and people didn't have to walk.
Right, all the people bitching about the radio, it's gonna fuck over like reading books. Come on.
So it turns out the author of this article is actually a 55-year-old professor from the United States, which is especially unusual. He seems pretty cool, so I don't have any personal.
Yeah, but their article's bad.
The article headline is laughable, but this is probably a cool person.
Bad article or bad editor?
Is The Guardian still a UK publication?
I can't even tell. They mostly talk about American shit, and it's written by Americans.
Because American culture is world news. Like, this is what I was I didn't want to interrupt you and be like, don't assume Guardians only talk about UK. But the Guardian is a international news.
No, I understand. It's not that it only talks about the UK. It's just that it disproportionately talks about the UK due to its location.
I thought at least op-eds would focus on culture there.
I mean, they've run op-eds that are literally by like Boris Johnson. So it's like,
yeah, and then they run op-eds from as you say, some fucking professor from America. They don't give
it's a very odd contrast. Anyway,
cue up the next one.
The next one is something that Jason and I have talked about.
Wait a sec.
I assume it as well.
No, I'm pausing you. How does this 55-year-old guy not have the answer ready to this? Unless it's a rhetorical question. Whatever, woman, person, birthing person. Whatever.
I'm sure that she does. It's just a way of getting you into the article.
But it's gotten me mad at the article, not siding with them.
That's correct.
And they've won. They still
now
won.
Maybe this is just my brain disease. Every article I read gets me fucking infuriated.
Well, the woman is basically a political science professor at like Harvard, so it's not surprising to me that she would write an article.
Well, Harvard, now you got me on their bad side. It's like the but it's cursed, but it comes with taffy. Like, bounce it back and forth.
And a bunch of other colleges. Anyway, the next one is something that we've discussed at some length off the podcast, and I think we dipped into the podcast, which is what will be the immediate consequences of climate change. And it's mostly just going to be torturing migrants.
Yeah.
Specifically, from Politico.com, how climate migrants are roiling American politics.
How climate migrants are making Mitch McConnell shit in his diaper.
Americans really are the ones who have to suffer as we don't admit these people struggling to survive.
Yeah. Journalists really overuse words like roiling.
Yeah.
How could people fleeing local apocalypses do this?
How could they have chosen to live near water?
The audacity.
The one thing...
I can't wait for the political movement of like center Americans become the new Republicans who are like, man, my grandpappy chose to live in the middle of fucking nowhere, and that was the right thing to do, and we are moral people because all these water drowning people deserve to die because they chose to be by the water.
Right.
All the like pro dust contingent.
Yeah.
Water, I don't touch the stuff.
Trilon people.
I'm more of a syrup guy myself. Like,
Yeah.
God.
Meanwhile, the Heartlands turn into like the desert.
Yeah,
So it's not really going to be great for anyone.
it's gonna be funny.
But carry on, Aiden. It sounded like you had something to say.
No, it wasn't. Well, I did, but it wasn't at all important because
I decided to put my foot down.
it was just that among the first people to be affected by extreme climate change and rising water levels, there are of course going to be tragically a lot of people in the global south and third world countries that are not at all as equipped to even combat it in the short term. But it's also going to be Venetian people, and I just find that kind of funny.
The Venetians had it too good in history.
Yeah.
Well, it's also Florida. Florida is boned.
Yeah.
Which that'll be funny.
All the way back to Roman Ravenna, like this murky swamp shithole, which even compared to the rest of Europe is decrepit. Like when I went to several countries in Europe on my one vacation that I could afford at some point,
like 15 years.
Yeah, like 15 years ago, to give you a sense of my personal finances. But basically, Venice, despite its wonderful architecture and whatnot, basically was a shithole. Like there were pigeons that were dominating every corridor and street, like chasing people away. The city looked drab and worn down and filthy. Every canal was filled with like dead animals and garbage. And I was just like, this is really sad. Like, this is one of the wealthiest and most prosperous cities in Europe during the High Renaissance, Middle Ages. I mean, they were so successful that they literally like looted other major cities like Constantinople for their wealth and artwork and stored it there. And now it looks like a dumpster fire. And it's like this place has tremendous historical and artistic significance, and it's really falling apart. And that's even besides the fact that it's sinking into the earth. Yeah. Which is just kind of a side note, and much faster
as the water levels rise.
Yeah, when the water levels are rising, even as their mud slowly sinks, like
as hell tries to claim it,
thousands of years
to the deep with you.
Yeah, this is actually the Byzantines' long-awaited punishment for destroying Constantinople. Is watching their rivals slowly sink into the earth,
become Atlantis.
Yeah, this is really about Venice. I think you've hit the head on the nail.
Thank you.
I can't wait because I can just see them now. I can just see the ticker on CNN in the year 2055 saying like, Governor DeSantis Jr. yelling at the federal government for not giving, stimulus and relief money to drowning Floridian citizens. I can just see now the same political fights, the same petty bullshit that we've all been dealing with the last 20 years. It's just going to happen with future issues. And they're never going to be solved. It's just going to be the same song and dance, the same runaround. We're going to have, President Malia Obama being like, well, I can't really do that. We're going to go bomb, layouts. It's just going to be the same shit.
The Florida one, though, has a brief positive note in the midst of the human misery, which is a bunch of Cubans will probably have to raft their way back to Cuba and ask for clemency.
Where they will all be promptly arrested by what's Castro the Eighth or whatever.
Well, they'll be put back to work on the plantations their grandfathers owned.
Yeah.
Or reinstating slavery in Cuba just for you.
But only for former slaveholding families, which is I'm almost okay with. But yeah,
but officially not okay with.
No, I mean I'm not okay with it, but it would be very funny.
For the record, we are an anti-slavery podcast.
Yeah. But like it's like the Chappelle Show thing. Like if I could, I'd do it every episode. Like if you could put a slave owner into slavery and make them deal with it for a while, I don't know. Anyway,
it's scared straight,
Yeah, it's a Django Unchained.
Yeah, we know that shit works.
Point is, this is like on a more accurate note, as much as the riffing has been amusing. Like this is mostly people, as you say, from the global south who are largely impoverished, whose homes have been destroyed by some either slow or rapid climate change event, like an earthquake or a tsunami, or the sweltering heat ruining their environment. And of course, America, a nation of immigrants founded on its pluralism and diversity and settler colonialism, is not okay with new settlers, colonialists, immigrants, diversity, any of that. Borders are shut. We're full. Apparently.
Oh my god, I watched the most racist video the other day. I was just trying to Google the earthquake in Japan from 2011,
Yeah.
and so I watched what seems to be like a National Geographic video
Mhm.
where they're like, and here is what the nature of the earthquake was, and here's how the Japanese people rallied together to fix the damage. And then they went into this weird shit like, but in Japan, there was no looting, and not a single yen was lost,
Uh-huh.
and no one robbed it, and there were no riots, and everyone worked together, harmony, because they're all Japanese. And then it goes, but in '05, Hurricane Katrina. I was like, what the fuck am I watching? It suddenly turned into like fuck black people out of me trying to find out scientific information about the Japanese earthquake. It was
Clearly
wild.
the Japanese are better humans than black people.
I mean, look, yeah, sure, they have a more homogenous society. We get it. But it was like, and then the monkeys in New Orleans started killing each other. And gangs. It was so
always horrible. It's always horrible. And of course, there's almost never any mention of the fact that like they have a functioning government and society that actually tries to take care of people who are in a crisis.
I'm amazed the video did not reference Chris Kyle.
Whereas, like Kanye West's assertion about George Bush is the most accurate thing we have about
the most accurate thing he's ever
happened. Yeah, it's the one thing he said that's unambiguously true. Like, yeah, like the United States didn't give a shit if black people got wiped out by either the literal events of Katrina or the aftermath of Katrina, where everyone's starving and homeless and doesn't have electricity or water or health. Like, of course, people turn to fucking lawless behavior. There's no laws or government in place. Everything's underwater.
Well, see, that's what I want to parse out, because the video seemed to say, like, it was almost like the religious thinking, like, it's obviously Mother Nature's Mother Nature, but the real test is how you deal with the adversity. And the argument was, well, the Japanese people dealt with this adversity with class and aplomb and tolerance, but America, we didn't handle this adversity well. We handled like a bunch of shit assholes. Like, yes, because we live in a failed state, and that was only back in '05.
And also, the rest of the time, we celebrate being selfish assholes. Why is it suddenly bad when it's not your group? Like, the entire ethos of America is like, greed is good, pursue your own power and aggrandizement. The American dream is just about you. The entire culture is enormously individualistic. Why would we suddenly be communitarians?
Because all that is only when it's under legal framework.
Right.
Only if the people who looted in Katrina got laws passed saying they're the ones in charge now, could they then pillage and steal. Because then it would be legitimate business.
I'm just saying, if you took your revolver and did literal, like, British-style highway robbery, you would be consistent with the American dream, as far as the rhetoric and philosophical underpinnings of just individual aggrandizement and wealth snatching. Like, the robber barons just did that in a larger, grander scheme, and they're considered like some of the most successful Americans of all time. So, like, come on. Like, the fact that the Japanese are communitarian in that instance is not surprising, because they're communitarian in most instances. Like, were we celebrating when, like, the pilots were committing, harikari, immolating themselves and crashing into U.S. battleships at Pearl Harbor? Like, no. Like, yeah, they're doing it for communitarian good, like wasps for a fucking hive. Is that a good thing? I mean, communitarians can also do bad things, right? Like, having a communitarian spirit just means you don't value your own life and aggrandizement as much as you do the whole. But the whole can also do bad things. Your society's not always purposed towards a good end.
Yeah.
So it's a ridiculous assertion to be like, oh, the Japanese communitarianism has only ever been good, especially for the U.S.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it fit this so well, and I think the issue that we will face as a country is, because we do not do collective action and we devalue it, we will not handle climate change well. Yeah. I just know we won't. Like, we botched a pandemic that required people pulling together in the same direction. We're gonna botch climate. It's just gonna happen. We botch everything. Everything's a giant botch job. We are the Russellmania of countries.
There's a, this is a bad intro, but to revisit the topic of slavery.
Hell of a segue.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like this isn't the most shocking or revelatory point, but it's just very depressing every time it's revisited. That, and this headline obviously identifies a crisis among American politics that could come with a large new migrant population being able to vote and thus influence American politics. And it just reveals that there's any kind of anxiety around this. That I'm not even going to say Republicans. What capitalists want from migrants at this point is they want a slave population, because capitalism in America, the American economy, the American labor source is not suitable, cannot live up to the demand without constant migrant additions at this point. It relies upon it. It usuriously abuses all migrants to satisfy the obscene demand for profit, capital, and output. But we want all of that. We obviously, not including us. America wants all of that without them voting, and without, and at least Republicans' cases, them reproducing. And when you remove those two things, we're just talking about slavery. Like not even like, some kind of like new wage slavery. It's just classic slavery. We want them to be tools, their blood upon the gears of capitalism, and that's all. And it's
just invent robot workforce. Just get in with the capitalists and just do the robot workforce.
Yeah, human life is cheaper. That's the reality. Inventing robots is a very expensive thing. Human life has always been cheap so long as no one protects it. And as we saw last week with the delivery article, an entire community can end up kind of trapped in a job niche that is basically just suffering and immiseration and abandonment by the state. And obviously, the capital class would never given a shit about them. And it's just like, oh yeah, that's your lot in life. How many Chinese are going to die of heat exhaustion building the railroads? Who cares? We got a railroad. Like the end result.
Not just heat exhaustion, getting dynamited.
Well, sure. What I'm saying is there's a long historical record in the United States of being a pluralist society, but also a society that uses pluralism as a shield for bringing in an immigrant pseudo slave population and working them to death for almost no reward. And that will almost certainly continue. Like the only way that immigrants are getting in is if they meet one of two conditions. They're like an intellectual capital elite because we're trying to brain drain the rest of the world. We're always selfish.
Yeah, they're trying to get a doctorate from a rich family,
or they're so incredibly desperate that they're willing to suffer some horrific work arrangement where they basically are slaves. And it's one of those two things. People are somewhere in the middle of those two positions, almost never get. And it's even easier to deny them access now that we have COVID as a justification for why immigration can't ever happen. Which is a whole other slew of articles that I'll save for later. Really gross. I mean, once again, no accounting for the fact the United States is the global, number one polluter in the world and driver of climate change. We'll never say like, "Oops, we fucked this up. I guess we have to take the consequences of taking these migrants in." No, fuck them. They're the problem, not us. Really awful.
We spent a good amount of time on this article, so I don't want to necessarily spur too much additional conversation, but can I read the first sentence of the article, because I think it's pretty indicative of where it's going.
Proceed.
Thank you. When Puerto Rican native Olga Gonzalez became the first Latina mayor of Kissimmee, Florida last year, she credited God for her victory. That's not the point, but others.
I know, it's just every time.
Yeah.
Others pointed to climate change.
Wait, what?
So,
that's really tied in with my earlier article.
How did climate change? Did a tsunami bring in voters? What happened?
I would have to assume that the disastrous effect of hurricanes on Puerto Rico
has driven more voters to her or to the community or to
Florida. Yeah.
But just like on Fox, on Puerto Rican Fox, are they gonna be like, can natural disasters stop becoming political? Like, who are you accusing of doing this?
But also the fact that others pointed to climate change as the alternative, as opposed to the ideas, the policies that.
Right, she won a fucking election.
No, there's just a certain, people vote for people who look like them. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just really gross to me.
Before I'll put a brief sort of nightcap on this, and this is kind of a long historical reach back. But if you're like a WASP or other white person who's afraid of like the decline of human civilization, not because of the things that are actually causing it to decline, because of like changing racial demographics or something, I will point out that almost the entirety of Western civilization hinges on a bunch of barbarians leaving Germany and merging with the dying remnants of the previous empire of Rome, which then created the modern world, essentially. So it turns out that even people who you think of as primitive and backwater can actually revitalize the entirety of your society.
Yeah,
and
but
your
they evolved to have
community.
pantaloons and be judgmental assholes.
I guess what I'm saying is you are descended from a bunch of barbarians who feasted on the corpse of an empire and then rebuilt an even stronger society afterwards. So give them a chance. Let these people who are suffering and miserable see what they can do with the wreck we've left.
Yeah, but it's the equivalent of the white species peaking in high school. Like we're on the downslope.
Yeah.
Going down.
Being afraid of a white replacement kind of theory is incredibly beta cuck behavior.
I got him.
Fucking wrecked. Well, speaking of
Yeah,
old
it's
white,
definitely not a Chad move.
speaking of old white people problems, we got another one in this apocalyptic narrative from the Wall Street Journal. The rules of retirement spending are changing.
War has changed. I mean, taking a vacation every year past 70 has changed.
Yeah.
You will now have to ration all your money in case your teeth fall out.
I am shaking my head so hard right now, you can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear the kinetic energy.
I'm giving myself CTE.
Yeah, you're
shaking my head.
whiplashing yourself. Yeah.
Ah,
How's everyone's retirement doing? You saving up?
I don't want to talk about it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just hoping I'll die before retirement age.
I think that's almost everyone's plan who's under like 40.
But,
what are you talking about? We're gonna hit it big in the podcast world.
It's true. We're gonna get big on our upcoming NFTs.
Yeah. It's up to you, audience.
I've been in the lab.
Buy this NFT of like a donkey with a gun in its mouth.
Yeah, buy like our Grape Ape NFT and like our Horny Goofy NFT, and maybe we'll make it.
Yeah, we're taking pre-orders now.
Scam the algorithm. Give us a 5-star review or something. Tell your chud uncle to listen to us.
Yeah. What apocalypse do you think has befallen the already privileged who have enough retirement savings to even worry about spending it?
The same article that's been written every single year since 1933.
Like several times a year.
Ever since Social Security was implemented,
Mm-hmm.
there have been people saying, gotta squeeze that waist belt, gotta tighten that belt, gotta really limit it, gotta pump the age up, gotta lower the eligibility. It's just the same thing. It's just, should you now be 85 when you can retire?
Yeah.
The workforce, look at Japan, they're running out of money, running out of workers, they're not reproducing, then we're not gonna be able to afford it, I know money's all fiat, but we can't do it.
Are you doing a Robin Williams impression?
It's the same
It was
scolding
like
assholes.
Robin Williams ex Biden.
It's the same scolding assholes who have existed in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Since the first fucking caveman. When the guy's like, he's got his berries and he's making a painting, and the other cave guy's like, I gotta save that for the winter. Like, fuck off. Let us be humans. Let us enjoy our lives. Let us flourish during our midlives and relax in our later lives. Fuck off with trying to scold people for dying and
But if you don't tighten your waist belt enough, you might not have any money to die with.
It's already the grimmest
you're
shit
dead
ever.
and holding on to.
This is literally the scene from that horrible show where they're throwing the old Vikings off the waterfall. Like,
Yeah.
God damn. Just let us die with fucking dignity.
No, I mean, it's a Wall Street Journal. You knew they weren't going to. Yeah.
Let's just burn the Wall Street Journal to the ground. That would make me happy.
The rules of burning the Wall Street Journal to the ground are changing.
In VR.
Yeah. Let's demolish Wall Street in Minecraft.
Rhetorically.
Yeah, it's
That was a close one.
Listener, it's
They'll
safe to
never
assume that
notice.
whenever Jason says something that's wildly inappropriate, it's almost certainly in Minecraft.
The Jason
You
character.
can't get enough of that
The
game.
Jason character is one great.
We need like a Jason recommends do crime counter.
Yeah, exactly. Be gay, do crime, skeleton meme. It's 24/7.
Crime 2K. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you said it, Jace. Yeah, it's disgusting.
Oh, I'm saying it.
Well, it's almost as disgusting as the last of our apocalyptic articles. The other three are manageable. This one's really beyond the pale. From the Atlantic.
This one's beyond the pale?
Office holiday parties really might never be the same.
No, I like this.
Ooh, that was a close call. I was worried for a moment.
I usually don't do the dry ironic setup. I usually do the obvious setup, but it was a nice switcheroo.
No, see, I read this as good. Like, because I think the number one victim of Me Too is holiday office parties. That's where all the sexual harassment came from. Every fucking motherfucker in the cubicle gets together, drinks a little bit, and starts like flirting with the secretary. That's where everyone gets harassed. That's where. Thank God. I'm so.
Remember all the Cuomo Christmas photos? Right. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, if we don't mention this episode, I got something about Chris.
I'll leave that to you.
I gotta get that motherfucker.
Okay. You feast on that corpse.
So, like, I've been to exactly one office holiday party in my life. Man, that sucked. I've watched Netflix shows about holiday office parties. I watched a Black Mirror episode about it. Like, this shit sucks. I'm so glad they're dying. Fuck them.
Forced joviality is not usually very effective. Mandatory joy. Come together with people who you have to barely tolerate to survive in this world, and talk about the holidays when you have different religious beliefs, and pretend to care about each other as you give each other these gifts that you mismatch the price to. There's a lot of awkwardness to it, but the main issue is they'll never be the same again. Like they're dying, folks. COVID has killed them.
I'm okay with this level of nostalgia. I'm okay with 40-year-olds having nostalgia for the aughts. Yeah. It's just gonna die, and like that's the way it is. It's just drowned. It's drowned, Jim.
Yeah.
Adjust to the 25-year-old employees you're now terrified of.
Well, millennials killed Applebee's. You can't have your holiday parties there anymore.
Yeah, I wish millennials were actually responsible for killing all this evil shit. Please give our generation.
Millennials aren't that effective.
Yeah.
Where's like, man, millennials canceled capitalism. Yes, please. Can we get on that?
Yeah.
So I think the obvious assumption is that this is about COVID. So are they kind of just concluding that COVID is going to exist forever and we're never gonna?
That's true. Actually,
get back to the office though, because I have yet to see a publication admit or make any kind of suggestion that we shouldn't be going back to the office. Right.
I was going to say yes to the first half, no to the second.
Yeah, remember,
it will continue to exist in some form, but we were definitely going back to the office. Like, there's no way that we care enough about human life to be like, okay, there's a marginal chance of dying.
No. So I think it's worse. I think the office is gone. All these companies are going to save money on rent, and the office is now your home. And everyone's now just in prison in their own house.
Yeah, but they don't have enough control over you in your home. Like, they don't know if you're getting blown.
Oh, just wait for it. Just wait. The control measures are coming.
Yeah, Bezos is working on some new
on this shit. We had the robots that fine you when you don't break traffic rules. Like, yes, you're just gonna be like, you're jerking off in the toilet, Dave. Get back to work, Dave. Like,
Google Panopticon is already in the works.
Yeah, don't worry. Like, no, the office parties are gone because the office is dead. But work is not dead. The office is dead.
I wish I knew enough about The Office to make an office joke here, but
that show died years ago.
You make it, audience.
I like the idea that it can't accept the idea that people will be working from home because the prevailing narrative among mainstream media is that we have to go back to the office. So it's just like, we're gonna have to go back to the office, but unfortunately, not enough people are going to survive the work here because of disease to really enjoy the holiday party, because there'll be
just turnover and horrible wages and people hating their lives. Like, it's the whole shit's destined. Like, it's all a giant house of cards anyway.
Speaking of giant houses of cards, the entire global system is clearly unable to handle the newest COVID madness. I mean, depending on when you're listening to this, audience, you may be like 4 Delta variants down the line or whatever. But I guess we'll just call this section Alpha and Omega in case you get to the beginning or end of these, which will never come. From, what is this? CNN, actually. A very helpful headline. Have you heard the new Republican conspiracy theory about the Omicron variant?
No, and I do not care.
Once again, CNN. This is CNN. This is supposed to be serious.
This is CNN.
This sounds like a 10-year-old girl came to me at lunch while I'm drinking from my juice box and goes, "Did you hear what Cindy said about Omicron?" Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Go away.
Shut the fuck up.
Headline needs to be, here is the Omicron variant and how you can avoid it. Or, this is the conspiracy theory about Omicron to not believe. That's it.
What if we helped spread the conspiracy theory by advertising it?
But see, this is what pisses me off about CNN. People pretend CNN's the wing of the Democratic Party, and like, man, you listen to CNN, and then CNN's like, yeah, we engage in this shit. We're as bad as you say we are.
It's real dumb.
Like, I think CNN has contributed just as much to radicalizing Americans to the right as Alex Jones has. Because every opportunity...
far more. Alex Jones hasn't convinced anyone. He just finds the cranks and gets them on his side.
Well, no, I mean, we'll get into that later. But my point is, CNN takes every opportunity to step in the shit that people... the imaginary shit that people accuse them of, and then they make that shit real. It's unbelievable.
I almost guarantee you it's not even a new conspiracy theory. It's just been...
Right, it's when they just brought it up from, like, March of 2020 or something.
Yeah, so the demon sperm or the, some sort of antichrist thing.
Or, like government control to, steal elections.
The other ones were too small for the microchips. Now they get the chips in this one. Like, come on.
Yeah, the Omicron makes you anti-magnetic. You repel metal objects as they get near you.
Yeah, and everyone knows how Magneto's not killed.
Yeah.
They're trying to create X-Men.
They're all trying to recreate the Matrix scene where he stops the bullets and sends them away. And it's going to kill a lot of Republicans who think they can stop bullets. But really, I mean, there's nothing more important in a time of extreme crisis across several dimensions than mocking fringe elements of the Republican Party as your news. That's what you need to get to the news to do. Because there's not enough of it on like SNL or whatever.
How do these people sleep at night? How do you go to work and be like, time to make people feel bad about their existence? I don't know.
It justifies their own existence because there's people worse than them. That's what it's for.
Yeah, look at these idiots.
I'm sure I can be accused of the same thing, but like, I'm trying to improve the world. How does this improve the world? How does this information inspire us to change hearts and minds, or inform us to make better scientific and medical decisions?
Yeah.
What is the function of this article other than to make other people feel bad?
Yeah.
To make other people feel good. And those
people, Schadenfreude isn't.
I was going to say, let's ask Dr. Schadenfreude about his psychological.
Actually, Alex Schadenfreude is the monster.
Dr. Schadenfreude's monster. Yeah. This does have about as much in common with Mary Shelley as with psychology. You're right. This is kind of a horror story.
It's very, very definitely emblematic of romanticism. Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent example of this kind of article and headline. I will say though, it's just a perfect distillation.
Yeah,
absolutely useless and more harmful than even the most banal thing.
Simultaneously queenie and catty and virtue signaling.
Right? Like,
very unpleasant.
Who is this trying to impress?
Yeah, I
you know what this is? This is the conversations that libs had at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like, and another thing. Did you hear about? Like,
this is a 60-year-old suburban white woman talking to another 60-year-old suburban white woman, either at Thanksgiving or at that holiday party they said.
Oh no, Alex! This is what our aunt would say.
Absolutely.
Oh no!
Absolutely.
They're
and they can be completely nice people, but their politics are usually very bad.
They've infiltrated the family.
Holy shit!
And I won't specify which aunt.
I just had like an old boy moment. Oh God!
No!
God damn it!
Brutal comparison.
You damn dirty apes! How can you have done this?
I'm going to save us from this situation by posting an even more troubling CNN article. This was somewhere between apocalypse and COVID, but here we are. Germany locks down unvaccinated people as leaders plan to make shots compulsory.
Now, so this is interesting. I saw this headline, and it didn't occur to me at all that this would be one we talk about. It's
really?
Awesome. It's like Germany puts unvaccinated people in a camel clutch, and it's awesome. It's hilarious.
Okay, but here's the thing. Even though I'm 100% in agreement with you that this is probably a good thing to be doing,
it's funny.
The optics of Germany locking down a set of people for supposed health reasons and then compulsorily injecting them with something is not a great look, bro.
Now, I did not consider that.
Yeah,
I may have missed context.
It's framed in like the most dystopian way possible.
But-
I guarantee you, it's just like, I mean, it's actually, they can access only things that aren't like frivolous entertainment, or they can only have gatherings of a certain amount of people.
Technically, it could have been like Germany set to arrest millions for violating state policy.
Well, Germany probably doesn't have that many unvaccinated, actually.
No, actually, they have one of the worst after America.
Really?
I have no idea why, but they still have almost half their population unvaccinated.
What the fuck? Whatever.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Whatever. But my point is, I'm secretly the one who's most enlightened because I think Germany's moved on past Nazism. So it didn't even occur to me. I don't even see color.
No, I know it's moved on. It's just, think about it's like the horse whipping the Haitian migrants. Like there's so much history in this exact region with this exact kind of setup that you have to think about that.
This is Gina Carano Twitter fodder. Like this is her reddest meat of all red meat. Like she could just go 1-to-1. Like they vaccinated the Jews and killed them. And God,
especially because it's the new social democrat government that's almost certainly doing this.
Whatever. Who gives a shit? Whatever. I read this one. It just went in one ear, out the other. I was like, all right, cool. Germany's putting the foot down.
You're not attuned to the everyone's a Nazi on the internet.
Nah, I've passed that stage of my internet proclivities.
Yeah. Probably. I mean, this one is funny to me because it's almost certainly a good policy and almost certainly going to piss off a lot of people, including people who, have good reason to be upset.
Yeah, but then there's going to be 8,000 articles about people who have bad reasons and they shouldn't be upset and they still write about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least in Germany, when people inevitably who have been gobbling up American conspiracy theories march wearing Stars of David to protest this, they can actually get arrested for hate crimes.
Oh man, that would be so funny.
Oh god, that's going to be such a train wreck if they do something like that.
When fucking Nazis are like, I'm persecuted in Germany.
Oh Christ.
Man, that is gonna be delish.
The American conspiracy theory exportation business is truly horrifying.
It's booming.
Well, I mean, we are the cultural center of the world, which is why the world sucks.
So
I'll just become dog shit.
Here's what's fascinating: the number of like moms who didn't have their kids vaccinated in the 90s was like 5 to 10%.
Yeah,
if that, it's not even that high.
Max, let's say 5%. The current percent of people who are unvaccinated in America is hovering between 35 and 40%.
It's and I'm afraid, as you say, it's going to have like secondary ramifications of like not wanting to get other vaccines. Just like fucking, I'm anti-vax across the board now.
That is the fastest growing. This conspiracy theory grew faster than JFK different assassination. Like, this is insane.
Russian peasants were more quickly convinced to become vacciners by Catherine the Great than we are to become anti-vacciners.
This is the most viral meme ever conceived.
Andrew Wakefield should suffer certain consequences.
He needs to write the I am become death.
Yeah, Andrew Wakefield needs to go before like a war crimes tribunal and be like, I had no idea that my financial scam
Your Honor,
was going to kill something like 300,000 to 400,000 Americans after a vaccine.
I was simply trying to get the bag.
Yeah, I was just trying to get the bag.
Your Honor, it was a prank, bro.
Yeah. Like, yes, I'm a con artist, but I had no idea America would run with it this hard. Which is almost certainly true.
Well, it's like the Trump argument. He was like, I'm running for president to make money. And then America's like, no, you're not. You're running for president to win. He's like, I guess I am now.
Yeah, it's going to be the Trump Wakefield ticket 2024.
Oh, God. Threw up.
Yeah. So I got one more article in the COVID/decline of civilization narrative. This one was actually one of the most interesting ones I've read, not because of exactly the wording, but because of the manipulation involved. And I'll tell you why, because I actually read some of this because I was hoping to nail Trevor Noah. From Yahoo, The Daily Show's Trevor Noah switches lanes on vaccinations and ignites a firestorm of online criticism. Now, from the title alone, what would you assume Trevor Noah did?
They're very clearly implying he's come out as anti-vax now.
Right, exactly.
Or even he is vaccinated and was pro-vax, but something changed and, some news story had a little twist and he's now saying like Joe Rogan shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that is not the case.
I would read that, see their intention, and then guess that he changed his like opinion on mandates, I guess, like strict mandates or something.
But the implication is some sort of anti-vaccine attitude.
Oh, totally, 100%.
Possibly even explicit anti-vax.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was my assumption as well, because I was like, well, the online criticism is almost always from like libs. So if libs watching his show freak out, it's almost certainly because he took like an anti-vax position. And since Trevor Noah is one of the least funny people on earth and kind of drove the Daily Show into the ground, I was like, oh, this is funny.
Now, I don't know if he drove it into the ground.
No, it was always going to go down because Stewart kind of let it.
No, Jon Stewart angled the plane to the ground and then told Trevor Noah to get in the plane.
Look, I don't want to be too harsh on Trevor Noah because he seems to be a genuine enough person himself, but his politics are terrible and his humor is even worse. So like, he doesn't do anything for anyone.
Which is why he's perfect for America.
Yeah, it's such a decline and fall compared to even what Stewart was bringing to the table. But anyway, that's been beaten to death by a million people. That's not really the reason I want to talk about this. Mm-hmm. This is actually to defend Trevor Noah, because the actual thing he said was that the Moderna Corporation's CEO is trying to manipulate events to profit from a new vaccine sale, whether or not the science is there to justify creating a new vaccine.
Which is true.
Which is 100% unambiguously true, and even the CEO would probably cop to it. Because, yeah, they're a for-profit business. They need to always seek new revenue streams. He didn't say he's anti-vax. He didn't say the vaccine wasn't necessary. He was pointing out that there's a capitalist motivation for them to do an unethical thing.
So what was the criticism he got?
How dare you suggest that we shouldn't blindly take any vaccine at any time and give them any contract we need?
But he didn't suggest that don't take a vaccine.
They're implying he did.
He said corporation is corrupt.
This is just like the Israel case of
look, we all do this. We all consume products from corporations that are evil. I bought Battlefield 2042 from EA. Like, yes, I know.
Well, you are now a monster.
Right, we're ending the podcast.
Like, we get it. Engaging in capitalism is intrinsically morally problematic. We get it. We still have to do it. We had this conversation before. We're like, we have to engage in commerce if we want to live and not be desperate.
Yeah, it always comes back to you live in a society.
Right, like, come on. Who hasn't heard that shit?
Listen, most of Trevor Noah's politics are extremely boring and like neoliberal, but like he once in a while does actually make an anti-capitalist critique, and that's what he's getting shit on for.
Who knows?
Pointing out that corporations are selfish.
It could be totally fake criticism. It could be like fucking bots or Hillary Clinton. Like,
well, it was enough that they felt the need to do a press defense.
No, stop. No, it was not enough. I've seen articles from the most powerful and prestigious media companies in the world who take a single tweet with 0 retweets and likes.
Yes, I read the article.
Oh, sure, but what I'm saying is there is no actual standard for like social media.
I know.
I've seen New York Times publish news stories and exposés and takedowns and hit pieces based on tweets from like the anime accounts that you see that have 0 followers, that have 0 likes, that have 0 contributions, that have 0 things of their own thing. Like it can be totally manufactured. Now, you're probably right.
It's not the biggest deal. Like, there's definitely worse controversies, but there's more than 1 or 2 people upset about these comments.
Whatever, fuck them. Then stop watching the show.
Yeah.
Which would be good for society if people stopped watching that shit.
I think we can safely say that this was not published by someone actually worried that he was stoking vaccine hesitancy.
No.
That's 100%, whatever the reason was, whether it was kind of a more coordinated corporate funded effort or just trending buzzword, that was not the actual thing, even though they're trying to feign that that's the reason.
Yeah, really blatantly manipulative to make you assume that 1, they give a shit, 2, that he's anti-vax when he isn't, and 3, that this is like, as Jason was trying to point out, like the biggest controversy ever instead of a fairly modest.
He switches lanes. So what was before? Was he saying that Moderna was a charitable sainted organization?
Exactly. Yeah, Mother Moderna.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, this is a really bad case of media lying.
It was so brutal. And it even got me because I was like, oh, thank God I can get Trevor Noah for some evil shit.
What was the news source for this?
This was Yahoo.com.
Okay, well, they don't know.
Which, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but they've supposedly prided themselves on their news desk
but like,
before a lot of these other institutions even existed.
I expect that this would get a retraction. Like, this should get an apology.
Yeah, this is just lying. Like the takeaway from this is blatantly as if he's anti-vax. It's like, no, he's not.
In fact, they have a defamation lawsuit on their hands.
If he wanted to, he won't. But if he wanted to, yeah, this is really, really misrepresenting what he said.
Same headline on Deadline as well.
But yeah, I am one of the least like pro Trevor Noah people there is, and he got done dirty. Like, I'm sorry, he got done dirty by this. So never let it be said that I can't defend my enemies.
You're a
Trevor
guy.
Noah,
He's not our enemy. He's just
no, I don't mean he's literally my enemy. It's just that every time I walk past his stuff on the TV, I just want to like
You
yards.
sigh. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh Christ, I once liked the Daily Show. But yeah, I mean, also his whole like incredibly regressive shit about like the miners' strike, where he's like, yeah, you had to kill him, but whatever. There's some stuff that I really am angry at him about. He's posted some like near fascist shit in the past without. Really
Well, he's South
considering it.
African.
Yeah. Anyway, it had to do with South African politics that to us all looks pretty fascist. But I don't want to get into all that. The point is just, yeah, this was one of the most manipulative media lines I think I've ever seen. So there we are. Trevor Noah, guilty of nothing, apparently. But it's important that we know about it in this particular case. All right. We've been waiting for it. It's the elephant in the womb. It's what we all knew we were going to talk about it. 65 million women could lose abortion rights in Supreme Court case from the Hill. There's many institutions that wrote about this, but I chose the Hill because I wanted to contrast it to another headline that was right next to it.
Do you think it's relevant?
Just a sec.
Okay.
Right next to this headline in the Hill in like bold font on the opposite side of the page, Senate eyes Plan B amid defense bill standoff.
That was not intentional. They just said,
I was going to say, do you think that was a joke or intentional, or that's just completely bizarre choice?
They are just absolute clown shoes. They're just.
I almost burst out laughing, despite the fact that one of like the most crucial civil liberties in our country is being threatened, just because of how absurd that was. Look, we still got Plan B.
Their website really should just be clownpenis.org. Like, they are the absolute fucking idiots of the political world. So what I was going to ask is, why do you think they included the 65 million women? Is it not enough to say like American women or just like women?
I mean, wouldn't all women lose it? Why is it only 65 million? Are they saying the women who happen to be at the moment menstruating?
It must be, yeah, birthing.
Future women, like, are they? Did they do the metadata and exclude grannies or like people who've went through fucking menopause already? Like, what the? Why do we need to know? Are they trying to say like this is a big voting block? Like, because there's half of those women probably vote Republican would be okay with getting the rights.
Well, let's put it this way: even within the Republican Party, a lot of them are still pro-abortion. But the specific number, I assume, is meant to highlight the sheer volume. Like, look how many people stand to lose.
Just say like 110 billion cops. Like, what? Who gives a shit? Like, why don't you say 3 billion humans who, if they happen to come to America on vacation, would be losing ability to lose abortion? Like, what does the number matter?
It really, I mean, to me at least, I think you're right that it probably is supposed to emphasize the scale, but
like, look how strong we are. We're strength in numbers.
Instead of just saying women, like all women, 51% of the population or whatever, it kind of just feels like, like a classic example of the Stalin quote. A bunch of people is a statistic.
Yeah, it's statistified for no reason.
Which is word for word what Stalin said, by the way. A bunch of people.
Yeah.
One human death's a tragedy. Million is a statistic. Yeah.
We're all PhD historians. Get over yourself.
Eat my shorts.
We all got through kindergarten, where we learned about Stalin. What school you went to?
Stalin until nap time.
Yeah. I went to the second grade archipelago.
All right, so we're obviously circling around an extremely tragic subject.
Yeah, it's a horrifying subject. That's why I only chose one article on it. But you can't not talk about it. I mean, by the time you're listening to this, there's a good chance you've already lost a fundamental human right. But it seems likely that a 6-3 reactionary court is going to try to, in whatever way they feel they can get away with, destroy Roe v. Wade and abortion.
Now, in case you're one of the many people who happen to be on board with most progressive politics and have a weird stick in your craw about abortion, I'm not even going to do the argument for you. You can look it up. Look up the argument for bodily autonomy. People do not have an obligation to provide resources in life to people inside them We do not force other people to do this at any other time. It's always entirely voluntary. No one is forced to give up their kidneys.
Yeah.
No one is forced to give blood. No one is forced to do any of the shit. You do not have to force women to create other life.
They're not going to stop getting abortions. It's just going to be incredibly dangerous.
Oh God, it's not even going to be that anymore. That's like old school. It's going to be herbal, like Eastern medicine bull. It's going to be fucking guru trend.
Well, it's going to be all of it. It's going to be all of it. It's going to be like Amazon abortions. Like they deliver, at-home abortion kits to circumvent the laws. They stand in defiance. There's literally going to be like corporations that are like, we stand with you, women. Buy our at-home abortion kit to defy the court. Like that, no joke. 2 years from now, like Bezos comes out, he's like, I'm super pro-abortion.
2 years from now, you can probably go on Amazon.
I'm going to help you resist
an abortion kit right now.
Buy this coat hanger from Amazon Coat Hangers. Yeah, no, that really is where we're headed, and it's one of the most frightening prospects. That not only is a foundational civil liberty on the edge of being probably permanently destroyed in our lifetimes. We have no power. Like, we have absolutely no power to fight this, despite controlling every other aspect of government. The Democrats control the presidency. They control the Congress. They control basically the cultural and media narrative for the most part. And yet, a bunch of geriatric assholes are going to strip this away from us because the Republicans know how to do politics better. And it's like, our like, this is a failed society. Is society coming apart? Yes. Is the state failing? Yes, because this can happen.
I have a question. What? It's obviously not because they think abortion is murder. Do the people at the top of the Republican Party believe in the white replacement theory, and they just want to force more white babies to be born? What is the actual argument that they believe to get rid of abortion?
That they believe, or that they articulate? That
they actually believe.
What they actually believe, because they don't give a shit either way, it's that this is a huge driver to hold together an evangelical core to the Republican voting base.
This will just win them elections forever.
This is just about winning elections. They could not give less of a shit about abortion. It is purely a powerful driver for their base. Which is why they've dallied on actually repealing it for a long time, because if they actually repeal it, then the base won't care anymore.
Right, so they have to... But see, that's the thing. If they need to keep it in permanent dangled.
Yeah. So this is what I think what they're actually going to do is partially restrict abortion to say we got a victory.
Like when they limited the Civil Rights Act a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a partial restriction, not even because of like any sort of ethical consideration about like giving a few windows.
So they can say we can always get along.
They could be like, yeah, keep voting Republican for the next 500 years so that we can eventually completely remove abortion. This
is a politics as a service.
It is.
We expect this party to have a 100-year lifetime.
It is.
You'll be playing Destiny. I mean, Republican forever.
Cynical, self-serving, like Skeletor shit that the Republicans always get up to, which is like no amount of human suffering matters to them in the slightest if it gets them, a swing state. And that's what this is.
I guess what I'm saying is, for all the conspiracy nuts out there, do they think if abortion ends, Hillary Clinton will stop drinking infants' adrenochrome? Like, do they think this will solve the QAnon pedophilia, living forever lizard people crisis?
Yeah, for the real conspiracy heads out there, is Hillary Clinton a clone, a robot, or still herself?
Or a lizard?
And whichever version of that, is she still drinking the adrenochrome? Like, have the clones become corrupted? Who the fuck knows? But this is, I mean, of all of the crises that have happened to us more or less against our will, and by our, I even include like our government and our political elite who were totally caught off guard, obviously, by COVID. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Like, if you were an alien looking in at the world, in the middle of all these other crises, suddenly we're like, what if we had an enormous cultural civil war over a foundational human right? This is the time that we can handle this.
Wars have been fought over less, so I'm really not that shocked.
We could literally see civil violence over this issue because of how incredibly important it is and how many people stand to lose as a result of it. I know the Republicans are going to be Republicans, but like, this is so stupid. Not only because it's a completely wrong-headed and evil thing to do, but because we are on like the knife's edge of disaster for so many other reasons that like stacking a whole bunch more bales of hay on that camel just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Even from a cynical, evil perspective. We're so fucking fragile right now as a society.
They're doing it for the memes. They're doing it to shit on libs. Like, they're doing it out of only malice. I think, like, as you say, let's say this backfires. Let's say this doesn't win them elections. I don't think they even care then. Like, they like immiserating their opponents. It's their thing. They've got they're like what's it like? They're like a vampire who's now tasted like werewolf blood. Like they're it's too good. They can't not have it anymore. They have to. The only thing they can get off on is hurting other people. They can't even get off on like just being happy.
Yeah, they're all dentists now. But
they've had man flesh. They can't ever go back.
The reality is, a lot of Republican women do not want this to happen, even though they're Republicans and other.
Yeah, but a lot of them do, which is a real problem.
And this is a huge wedge between women in general and the Republican Party. So even if they retain their like evangelical core of assholes or whatever it is that they're banking this will secure, it actually will have the opposite effect of what they think it will, which it'll drive down their polls. And the irony is they'll probably lose some more elections as a result of this, and it won't matter because the Supreme Court's a lifetime appointment. So we will have majorities against them going forward, probably for the rest of our lives, and we will still be living under the policies of this draconian madness.
Now, as of the time of this recording, nothing's been decided. Nothing's been set in stone. But I think we all kind of believe what Alex said, which is that there's going to be some like compromise bullshit.
Yeah.
They restrict certain parts of it at certain places and certain times. Like there's going to be some Pyrrhic minimal victory that they're going to hang their hats on for 2020, 22 and 2024. But most people who get abortions in general are still going to have most of their access if it hasn't already been totally eliminated by their state.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The abortions have already been curtailed to the point of near non-existence in like 20 or 30 states. So this is just going to be like ceremonially saying, and also fuck the rest of you. Let's take away something from everyone else. And New York
City and California be like, no, we're just like what were they called?
Like sanctuary cities.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, we're now abortion sanctuary cities, and so they're gonna flaunt it, and there's gonna be lawsuits, and nothing's gonna get resolved.
This is going to be.
It's just a giant fight over nothing. And then we're gonna get articles that say this is the 10 reasons why this political fight is different from every other political fight, and we're gonna record an episode shitting on them for being idiots because it's the same cycle. Because as Aiden said, time is a flat circle.
There's going to be a bunch of lib articles that are like, we can't believe that the moderates of the Supreme Court did the anti-abortion
Vote D.
How could these people who were only put in the Supreme Court for the singular purpose of doing this thing do the thing? There's going to be so many surprised, scandalized liberals who don't understand how, a nearly convicted rapist and an evangelical psychopath and an asshole.
And then even though we got
conservative, all vote conservative.
And then even though we got Kagan and Sotomayor, there's still going to be those assholes out there who be like, if only we had RBG, like RGB, whatever fucking name is. Like there was the same thing. We all can see it. We've all lived through it enough that we can all just predict the future.
There was literally an article that's like, there's only one mother on the Supreme Court, and they're talking about Amy Coney Barrett, and I was just like, please,
what?
Please.
I saw that one, yeah.
That may be too angry to even talk about. I'm not even dignifying them fucking discussion.
And then there was the article from Slate that's like, there's 3 vaginas on the Supreme Court, or are there 4? There's like, the pussy, like.
Yeah. I would almost literally give Slate credit if that's what they said.
No, the Slate one is, but there's 3 vaginas on the Supreme Court, and the Bro Bible one is like, there's at least 4 or 5 vaginas on the Supreme Court.
Fucking Thomas. That's a fucking wild take.
Get on it, Bro Bible. Hot off the presses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredibly upsetting topic. It's one that I think pretty much everyone who reads it is going to be personally affected by, because they're either a woman or they have women in their life that they care about, family and friends and etc., or they're just humanists who happen to have the commensurate empathy to actually care for people outside of their personal group.
Or they just care about half of the human race.
And of course the other dynamic, which I don't even know is worth going into very much because we've talked about it in other cases, is just the pathetic feebleness of the Democratic Party, is complete inability and not even inability, unwillingness to wield the power that we have given them as voters, because this was written in the sand, for decades now. I think we could obviously get pushback for how critical and sometimes derisive we are of RBG, but she certainly she knew that this was a fight. This was a monumental milestone fight that would be coming. And she clung to the end of her term into a Republican president's term, nonetheless, because of her ego. That's the only reason. I mean, if she cared about women, if she cared about not even just women, like this, this is even just like a legal precedent that is horrifying. She would have stepped down. But
yeah, if she cared for the entire supposed importance of the Supreme Court as an institution and its validity and its like continued being a centerpiece of American politics, then maybe she shouldn't have let it become a clown show by letting completely psychotic right-wing radicals dominate it through her own obstinacy. And that's what we're now seeing, which is like, we know that the court is incredibly stacked, right? Like it's not a 5-4 court, it's a 6-3 court. There is no version in which you get enough people to not have a right-wing outcome.
And they are leaning in favor of an outcome that the minority of their own party supports, not even a majority, and that about a quarter of the entire country supports.
Right. This is a tiny minoritarian faction that is now going to essentially operate like a theocratic, like theo-fascist court, depending on your ideology, and just kind of dictate to the entire country an incredibly unpopular opinion that will restrict civil liberties to almost nobody's gain.
What do you think the odds are they fuck it up? What do you
In
think
what
the
sense?
odds are they don't get the ball across the line?
Well, I mean, they're completely in charge of whether they succeed.
I know, but like, I could just imagine. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast. The last time I actually genuinely watched the news was during the Kavanaugh hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so disgusting to me. I just decried then. I will no longer watch cable news.
Yeah.
And I have never since. Like actively participate in watching it and going to it. And I still read the news articles because it's fun and like doing this. But and I don't know. I can see a world where Kavanaugh's like, well, what about this example of Washington? Like, I could just imagine where they fuck it up because they're so in their own head.
Like Roberts and Kavanaugh get together and they're like, okay, we'll ban abortion, but only for black people or something.
They write like a dissenting opinion that agrees, but agrees slightly differently, and they don't have the like. I can see them fuck this up.
I mean, that is our only chance, and it's laughably low and pathetic, and it gives you a sense of where we're standing right now. Our only chance is that some evil people decide to disagree on marginalia.
Right. I think there's like a 40% chance of legalese fucking this up for them.
I wish it was that high.
Yeah, Coney Barrett has like such a...
I mean, I still think there's a 60% chance they get it across the finish line.
A paroxysm or spasm of textualism that she like gets...
Like, what if she does the ultimate toe knife botch job?
Hits herself with confusion trying to read the Constitution.
We have a better chance of one of these fucking geriatric ghouls just having a stroke before they can put their pen to paper than one of them really like having a crisis of conscience.
God forbid that happens.
Well, when do they go into recess for winter?
I don't fucking know.
Because aren't they hearing the case now? But like,
all I'm saying is Omicron might be a terror, but some variant of COVID might be our only hope. Depending on how long they recess for winter and where they go.
Nah, they're immune. They all have the hate force fields.
And before you think that's too dark a joke, as the news has pointed out, there's 65 million women's lives on the line here. Fuck off.
Also, remember, they got my boy in 2016. What's his name?
The pizza guy?
Yeah, what's that guy's name? I forget.
Oh god, no, I forget his name.
All right, cut this part of the podcast.
No, I don't know.
It will be cut because it's gonna be really boring.
You might salvage it. What's that guy's name?
I don't remember his name.
God damn it! Come on.
We can bring it back.
It's the 5-second rule. But my point is, like, COVID got my boy that guy. I don't think he can get other Republicans.
Yeah, it's very unlikely. They're going to have
couldn't get Trump.
The irony is they're going to have some of the best healthcare in the fucking world just to make sure they can deprive other people of it.
Dude, what if they're so conservative? They're like Dana White, and they all start taking the Joe Rogan.
No, they're not. They're not that stupid
to get through it.
As evil as these people are, nobody as stupid as Joe Rogan gets anywhere near the Supreme Court. These are all the intellectual elite of evil.
Okay, but here's what I'm saying. There's a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here. Okay, so Dana White got COVID. Dana White took the Joe Rogan monoclonal antibodies and ivermectin bullshit.
Oh, Christ.
But Dana White supported Donald Trump. Dana White spoke at the Republican National Convention. Dana White, when he's too old for MMA, is going to get into politics. Dana White might actually be the president someday. And he did the
don't you bring that evil in here?
The clown retard shit for dealing with COVID. So like Dana White might be appointing Supreme Court justice one day. Maybe Joe Rogan ends up as Supreme Court justice when he's 70.
So you're saying that Dana White's going to run on a position of Dana White genocide?
And he's going to win with Dana White privilege. Yes, I mean, yeah.
Oh, God. All right. Well, this whole section has given me a stroke.
My point is, the Supreme Court in the future will be stupid enough to not get real solutions for COVID. It's going to happen. Mark my words. This podcast is going to be shot into space as the world is in nuclear annihilation because this episode called the it's like the fucking Judge Dredd comic of like the president who decided to nuke the world and create their hellscape. Like that's what's going to happen. Dana White's going to become president and decide to nuke fucking Germany, and we're going to end the world. And Kang and Kodos are going to get this episode.
Well, on that completely rational note, I think we'll cap off our news section. But we're not quite done with you.
This episode.
We're not quite done with you yet, audience. There's a few more sort of mini dive articles I wanted to touch on, which were too stupid to do a full elaborate deep dive on, but were way too blatantly evil and ridiculous to not talk about in a little more depth than just the headline. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So this article's about Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
Why is he talking about religion?
That's what Thanksgiving's about, right?
Thanksgiving's not a religious holiday. Mm-hmm. It's a historical holiday.
It's an incredibly dumb article.
I don't understand how the longer David Brooks lives, the less history he knows. It's like he's Benjamin Button. He's like becoming a baby. He's lost history and object permanence.
This is so stupid.
It's almost like he's listening to the podcast. He even starts getting into debating the definition of wokeness.
This is like for Barney. This is for children.
And then he's just like, well, I spent a bunch of shit. Happy Thanksgiving! Like, and we're back with the tail end of this episode where I thought we would cover a couple of articles by someone who doesn't get enough love on our show, specifically the opinion writer for the New York Times, David Brooks. Very opinionated, very outspoken, incredibly dumb.
The Aristotelian David Brooks.
Yeah.
Loves war.
Really?
The guy whose politics lines up with a 4,000-year-old dead philosopher.
Yeah, a really conservative, idiotic thinker, and yet someone who has now been posing as like a neoliberal, enlightened centrist for a while. I think because of the Trump thing where he's like, okay, I can't be a Trump Republican. But for some reason, David Brooks has now gone from just being owning that he's conservative to being like, no, I'm an enlightened centrist. The mid position is always the way to go. And he's writing really insufferable opinion pieces in that vein, which basically just espouse conservatism as centrism. And I figured we'd bring a couple of them to light just because of how completely insane they are. One of them because it has to do with this issue of abortion. The other one just because it was Thanksgiving and he wrote something that really anyone could be offended by. So I think it should be interesting to dive into that. Which one do you guys want to start with?
Well, it's Thanksgiving is still somewhat on the tip of our tongue. Let's see what he had to say with about that holiday and see how it might ruin what fond memories I have of my recent experience.
So keep in mind, everyone, we've read these. Oh my god! Oh my god!
Get ready, we're heated.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so these are very brief. I recommend you read them as long as you can stomach it, just to get a sense of how upset
do not read these.
became.
Protest David Brooks. Do not read this tripe.
So David Brooks releases an article around Thanksgiving called "The Age of the Creative Minority," and when I first clicked on this article, I was almost expecting to see like race science, where it was like his explanation as to how like brown people do arts, which was going to be a whole other idiocy.
I was going to expect him to have read that other article about Black Hollywood buying up paintings, and he's like, "I bought one of these."
Yeah, awesome. Exactly. That would actually be less offensive than what this article actually was. And he uses this article to articulate a mixture of right-wing and far right-wing ideas, actually, about like white genocide and about the constant victim narrative of whiteness in our country. Which, again, this is written by a Jew, just like the long, well-loved, WASPs for all time, Jewish people in the United States, which is always amazing to me. The bootlicking that goes on from only recently integrated people themselves. But yeah, he goes on to basically say that because the large white plurality of the United States, of white Protestants primarily, are no longer as large a plurality, that they are essentially minorities, or at least they think of themselves as minorities, which is the same thing as being a minority. And so if you're a trans person who could get, murdered at any time by the state police, or a black person could get murdered at any time by the police, or otherwise your life sucks because you're a minority and America is incredibly cruel. I mean, yeah, whatever, but like WASPs are feeling sad because they're not dominant.
Well, let's parse it a little more. He's trying to turn intersectionality on its head.
Yeah.
He's trying to say, you say the white Christian, Protestant bloc is just a majority. But actually, using intersectionality, we can break it down into small little pluralities, which are in fact minorities. Checkmate, atheists.
Yeah,
That's really what he's saying. What he's saying
it's really dumb.
He claims that from the 50s on, the Protestant establishment has crumbled as America has become more marvelously diverse. But this is obviously still horseshit, because everyone in charge of the levers of power in this country are still white male Protestants. Now, of course, there's people on the edge. There's some white female Protestants in charge, and there's some white Catholics in charge, and there's some black male and female Protestants in charge. But the point is, those with money and power are the same people who have had money and power almost entirely for 70 years.
Donald Trump became president. Like, you don't get Donald Trump as president in a country that has any even slight respect for the lives of minorities. This is someone who explicitly ran on xenophobic fascist racism, who explicitly was misogynistic. Like, you can't elect someone like that in a country where it's like, oh, the power's in the hands of the trans blacks.
It's the same philosophical game that we talked about with religious people saying that atheists also have faith. He's just trying to say no one has a stranglehold and a monopoly on claiming they're a minority. So all these people who actually have power, who are now just doing grievance politics, can say, well, we're also part of a minority, so we're all on the same level. We're all in pigs in shit. God. And then he makes this whole thing about religion, which is, as we were just mentioning, Thanksgiving's not a religious holiday. It's not a Christian holiday. It's a holiday about immigrants, and it's a holiday about history. It's a holiday about people who are different coming together and being friendly, not being antagonistic politically.
Yeah, it's a rare case in which supposedly there's some sort of peaceful dialogue and exchange between indigenous peoples and white settler colonialists, and even that's been challenged obviously by historians and
of course,
for good reason. But in principle, it's supposed to represent some sort of peaceful exchange between people of different cultures. It was not about religion in any way. There was no religious component to Thanksgiving that had any relevance. And his constant eliding of the fact that ethnicity, culture, religion, politics are all different things. He just kind of merges them into coherent narratives because it's easier to then draw a narrative from them.
Aiden, you want to go into these 4 immigrant minds?
Yeah, I was going to say, he wants to
minority mind. He basically says what Joey Diaz is like. Man, Stipe Miocic got immigrant mentality. He makes this insane claim about the 4 different mindsets you can have.
Yeah, there is a 5th one, which is immigrant right clicker mindset, but he doesn't get into that.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the central thesis is a familiar one in the places where there is a cohesive narrative, because honestly, like, putting aside how we sometimes act boggled by how illogical right-wingers think, there are parts of this that literally do not make sense, that I at least cannot comprehend. But the cohesive part is a familiar narrative, which is basically a straw man, where the writer, the author in this case, David Brooks, pretends that we live in a post-hierarchy world, the kind of world that, left-wing people, socialists want, and then operating off of that assumption, uses that to attack people who try to resist oppressors, and as he says, stoke conflict. But yeah, going further into that, why don't I go down the line? So David Brooks puts forward the idea that there are 4 models, there are 4 approaches to, I guess, how people interact at Thanksgiving. A very funny kind of scenario to even kind of structure things within. But he says that the first is assimilation. Not
just interact, but like, this is how he says the minority mindsets, the mindsets of people who are part of minority.
These are the socio-political worldviews of any American minority, including white people.
Yeah, and in which, everyone is on equal footing, even as we've well trot out, white Christians. And so what he means by assimilation, as he sets out, is it's so confusing. The assimilationists feel constricted by their minority identity They want to be seen as individuals, not as a member of some outsider category. They shed the traits that might identify themselves as Jews or Mexicans or what have you. So essentially, I guess they're ashamed of what they are, to the extent at least that they want to avoid any conflict that might stoke by claiming their minority identities and such, becoming one glob of identity, which is, I assume, American is the end result.
I mean, he's talking about whiteface, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, what the fuck else is he talking about? Shedding your traits that identify you as a minority.
Yeah.
He's acting like we can respec our racial part.
Yeah. What the hell is he like? If you're an African American and you see a cop on the corner, you're not going to be like, all right, quick, let me put on my makeup, and now I am going to pass as white.
Yeah,
what are you
my
talking
polo
about?
shirt.
Yeah, let me just do my Chappelle white guy impression.
I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know I wasn't white. Like, what are you talking? That's nothing. He's confusing race and identity and politics and religion for a reason, which is that if you actually parse these out into separate things, none of this makes any sense.
All right, I'm too mad to not interrupt. First, he botches this list because he puts, here are the four: assimilation, separatism, combat, and integration. So first, he breaks these up in a totally illogical way.
Yeah.
Assimilation and integration are essentially synonyms, and separatism leads to combat. So one, he takes these concepts which are connected and separates them, and then he puts them in the wrong order, so they're not even the associated ones. It's like with combat. Like he's out of his mind. He's out of his gourd. All of you who have gone through elementary school learned about immigration to America. You learn about the concepts of assimilation and integration. Integration means you're integrating your cultural ideas into America, but you're also assimilating what are the larger American ideas into your life. It's why we're called the cultural melting pot. Even if that shit's a myth, it's a myth that we understand. He doesn't even understand the myth of being a melting pot. He's such a fucking idiot.
Can I just skip ahead, because I think this also elucidates a bit of his mindset, which is that
Guerrilla mindset.
He says Americans are a deeply religious people, especially when they think they are not being religious. In these days, what I would call the religion of minoritarianism has seized many hearts. So, recognizing, I can't even finish this.
Right. He's accusing them of the very thing he's doing in the piece.
Yeah.
Having any ideas means you're engaging in religious thinking, and therefore you're the same as the white Protestants who are trying to strip your human rights.
I do want to finish this list just because it explains the incoherence of his philosophy. So the first was assimilation, which is this idea that if you have a minority identity, that's holding you back because you want to be a climber, a riser and grinder. And so the assimilationists, like Brooks, want to discard their original identity so that they can become better integrated into a white waspy capitalist order. Then he has second, separatism, which is not...
Alex, he fucked it. No. He doesn't want assimilation. He wants integration.
No, I know. I'm making fun of the fact that he's even doing the thing he didn't say he wanted, because he's a Jewish person who constantly pretends like he's not, essentially, by writing to mostly reactionary Christians. Separatism, which is not what it sounds like, which is like Catalan independence from Spain. No, it's people who just don't want their culture to be eroded or destroyed because they're in a new country, which is to say almost everyone. So separatism is not even a coherent category. The way he's basically defining separatism is as people who want to preserve some aspect of their history, heritage, and culture. Which, considering how many, the fact that Thanksgiving exists as a holiday, or that we have like St. Paddy's Day, I mean, white people did not stop that either. So no one stops that.
He essentially starts by suggesting implicitly that Protestants are desperate and need to do that.
Right. Then we have combat, which is just his way of shitting on any kind of activism or political ability of anyone to do anything.
So
which
rude.
Is people who see life as a struggle between oppressor and oppressed groups. Which is to say,
like all of us currently.
You need to go to therapy if you can tell that there's class conflict, is basically what he's asserting. Like, the left is just so emo because it recognizes things like power imbalances, foundational, inequalities, the fact that a bunch of women are about to lose abortion access. Like none of those are real crises. They're just psychological problems.
He's basically just saying anyone who believes the world is not fair is getting triggered.
Yeah, you have to be crazy to think things aren't great right now. So yeah, he defines basically, he psychologically defines as irrational and destructive anyone who actually can recognize that there's problems in a society that need to be changed and are worth fighting for. So immensely black-pilled, if you actually read through the lines there. And basically says this is like the worst and most evil group of minorities because they're the ones who create a partisan divide on left and right, unlike the enlightened centrists like him with the big brain. Then we get to the most insane one, which is integration without assimilation, which, as we've mentioned, are synonyms, which is people who become part of a national whole with a pluralistic, hyphenated identity and fluid mixing of groups, which I'm assuming he's not talking about sex there, but maybe, that each contribute to an American identity. So what he's saying is all of the previous things, but nice. Like, keep your identity, join the other identities, and try not to fight. Like, that's it. This is not a coherent, separate idea. This is just the other ideas without the combat.
I'll summarize it even more succinctly. He's saying nothing.
Right. Well, yeah.
Yeah. It feels like he got to this point and he realized that he already sent.
He realized his turkey was ready and he fucking banged out the last paragraph and went in the fucking kitchen.
Basically, yeah.
His fucking turducken was ready and he had to go.
Yeah, the last
motherfucker.
Number 4 just kind of suggests like a melting pot idea without examining any realities of what that means or what kind of consequences his imagined model might have for different minority groups trying to integrate. It's just like, hey, also there's 4 where everything is good in the way that I think is good, which is assumedly whatever he thinks the right wing will be comfortable with.
Now, audience, you might be asking, but I thought the title was The Age of the Creative Minority. Why hasn't he mentioned creativity at all? And why does that have nothing to do with anything?
It has nothing. The title could have been anything.
He ends the article with, but this is the most creative way to live. It's the clashing of different viewpoints. Battle of ideas. That's all it is. Public forum for open debate. That's his argument. That leads to creativity. That's
clash, but don't have combat.
Holy shit, you get an F, sir.
It is very dumb, but it's also incredibly insulting because he does the thing, and this is how you know he actually kind of is becoming like a neoliberal, not just a reactionary, because he's doing the lib thing where you steal credit for everything the left has ever done as if it's the core truth of America.
As if it was always true.
The only reason why we don't have slavery, why we don't have segregation, why women can vote, why any of these things have occurred, why there's like a weekend in labor rights, is because left-wing forces and popular forces have fought for them because they belong to the third category of people who know what the fuck they're talking about.
No, that's combat, Alex. That's very unchill of them.
And for him to say, like, why can't you just enjoy all these rights that we have? Because we only got the rights from combat, you imbecile.
And even though they're constantly being eroded without monitoring and keeping up the fight.
He acts as though if we had just like been chiller, as if like no one ever fought about anything, then all of these historical wrongs would have just like fallen away. They would have just floated away on the top. Like, the entire premise of Thanksgiving would then give way to the eradication of indigenous peoples and the settler colonial project of the West, which basically wiped out like 95% of indigenous people. Why didn't they just quietly and peacefully incorporate themselves through integration without assimilation?
This article has made me so mad. I now want this podcast to succeed, and I want to become a celebrity, so I can challenge him to a celebrity boxing match and beat this motherfucking geriatric asshole's ass.
Beat this guy up, he's twice your age?
Fuck this asshole. Oh my god.
He's such a patronizing piece of shit.
Look, I had to read this dude in college. Fuck this dude. And then we got one more article about him.
Yeah, this is a doubleheader on just him because there were a couple that were just like really, really insanely stupid.
If your family, if you have relatives or parents that read David Brooks, politely inform them to read this article and then tell them to stop reading it.
But I mean, what really called me was not even just the fact that he missed the entire history of the United States and how people who are minorities were actually minorities have actually gotten any kind of rights protected. It's that he proceeds to normalize and both sidesify white genocide rhetoric as if that's true. Like, look, why are minorities so upset? White people are also white genocided and white minorities, so it's all equal. Like, he doesn't critically examine the claims made by anyone. He just reiterates and regurgitates them as though because someone thinks it is therefore true. So it's like saying, well, half of America thought that Iraq had something to do with 9/11. Right. So
he doesn't think grievances don't have to have evidence. They just have to be perceived.
Yeah, a lot of people are fucking wrong.
If the right wing perceives that they're being have grievances, that's
Yeah.
just as legitimate as black people getting killed by cops and people having grievances over it.
Yeah. He equates religious preference and
he basically says we're all just engaging in religious delusion,
economic ideology with ethnicity, with race, as if they're all things. You know, they're all like there's things that happen. You know, you might come into conflict with other people based upon
he was like
what you've
zonked out of his
chosen.
mind?
No,
He wrote this?
no, that's too charitable.
No, this is literally what he's always like. This is what he's always like.
You can't not be on Percocet or something to write this shit.
But I mean, the entire article has the tone of like a professor scolding their idiot student in like a sort of vaguely polite but incredibly demeaning way. That's like, oh, if only you were a little brighter, you could recognize that class conflict's an illusion in your psychologically damaged mind, and you have to get over your emo-ness. And it's really just about like recognizing anyone could be good and anyone could be bad. So don't do politics. Like it literally, there's integration assimilation the only way forward. He basically says the good and evil runs through every human heart. You begin to see not just groups, but diverse individuals. Okay, cool. Let's start a movement to fight individual evil. He's literally framed it in a way that you can't have politics. Because to have politics, you have to be able to identify things you want to change and saying like, well, everyone's got their own issues. It's like, well, yeah, no shit. But that's not a thing you can fight. There's no movement there. He's intentionally neutering politics of politics by saying it's like, well, hey, there's some bad people on both sides, so why don't you just get angry at individuals and not have a politics?
I have found a friend.
I
have found a friend. In the top right, you can see a little comments thing.
Uh-huh.
The second comment is this guy, Tim Boris, who opens with, I am a communist. And he goes on to annihilate David Brooks. Second comment, annihilated this motherfucker. He did the work for us.
I don't even see a comments section.
At the top right, see a little thing. It says 131 comments. The little like.
No, I think I've got it all blocked out by some ad blocker.
But it's not an ad block. It's part of the website. The point is, you know what? Praise this man. He's doing the God's work. He's doing our work. We welcome to the show. Come on, let's
first
together.
Whatever this.
Holy shit! I'm glad there are other people hate reading this motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even have another one of this fucking bullshit to talk about, but like. This is someone who is broadly considered to be like respectable reading by the sort of liberal establishment. This is an incredibly evil piece. Like it glorifies and justifies white genocide rhetoric. It puts down anyone who's trying to actually fight for their rights. It ignores the history of the United States and the struggle that they've had to deal with so far. It demeans and belittles anyone who's actually trying to make a change in the world. And then it ends with, Happy Thanksgiving! I'm out! Like it is so wildly against the spirit of actually caring about minorities. And
he doesn't give a shit about the battle of ideas. He put out his tweet and then left.
It's amazing.
He dropped T and fucking bailed.
I wish it was like I would rather hang out with the Chud Uncle than this kind of shit. At least they are a little more interesting.
Well, Article 2 has to be better, right? It'll probably raise their opinion back up.
Yeah. And not just be whinging for like 10 paragraphs about abortion. So let's read about this whinging about abortion.
You've given the game away, Alex.
Abortion, the voice of the ambivalent majority.
Which, that really says it all, doesn't it?
Oh, by the way, that last article had 131 comments. This one has 2,200.
Yeah, I'm a dithering centrist.
So, before we even get into this, I'm going to talk about something that if you take like political science courses, you learn about called being a cross-pressured voter or a cross-pressured individual. This is a concept in which you have multiple people in your life or multiple forces in your life that conflict, and therefore your politics become painful and difficult to rationalize to yourself because you have different pressures. So, for instance, you might have a liberal spouse and a conservative pastor, or you might have a liberal workforce but a conservative social group. And so the concept behind being cross-pressured is that it becomes difficult for you to make political decisions or to hold a coherent politics because you don't want to offend any part of your social network or piss anyone off who you have to deal with. And so cross-pressured people, which is the majority of people in America because America is very partisan and divided across these issues, just kind of become politically apathetic because they want to avoid pissing anyone off. That's not a good thing. The entire point of studying that in political science is to point out why we have like no voter turnout or civic engagement, which is because people would rather not offend anyone than actually change the world for the better. This entire article is like in defense of that. It's like in defense of not having good politics because I'm cross pressured.
And of not ever developing an overarching political philosophy or logic for why you have the opinions that you have. Just
Right.
moment to moment, take whatever input you're getting and base what your opinion is generally off of that. You know, if your tummy hurts, you hate the food that you ate the day before. If you meet someone and they're mean to you, you hate the ethnicity or that political alignment. That's basically what David Brooks is espousing here.
I think David Brooks is essentially the American Carl Pilkington.
Yeah. Yeah.
His way of thinking he has 200 IQ, but breaking down the world like it's applesauce for babies, is unrivaled. I'd like to read a couple quotes I pulled just from the beginning of this article. A lot of the progressive commentary about abortion won't recognize the fetus at all. It's a funny line. For a professional pundit, which he admits to that he is, I've written remarkably little on abortion because I'm so torn. When I was about 19, a friend came home from college and realized she was pregnant. Oopsie, magic. I'm pregnant, huh? This guy's a fucking idiot. He's just a fucking idiot. That's all there is to it. He's a
I feel like you're going
idiot.
somewhere further with it.
Like, these quotes, they don't even recognize the fetus. I'm so torn. She realized she was pregnant. She thought she was just getting fat. Like, this is... Dr. Phil wouldn't say shit like this. Fucking Dr. Odd, who's running for Congress, wouldn't say shit like this. This is the ravings of a madman.
It should be mentioned that the overwhelming majority of women who get an abortion have no emotional pain from it whatsoever. Whereas people who are denied abortions are experience immense grief and tragedy, often because they are injured or killed trying to get a illicit abortion, or because they're forced to raise a child of rape or incest, or any number of horrible things associated with that, or because they're suffering serious health problems from a risky birth. So the conservative myth that like women get abortions and then they like kill themselves because they hate themselves for getting an abortion, no, that's a fantasy. The overwhelming majority of women have absolutely no problem with having gotten an abortion.
He also does this insane equivocation of miscarriages with abortions, except he doesn't understand that the whole premise of a miscarriage is you wanted the baby and couldn't have it.
Right.
And an abortion is you don't want the baby. Like,
yeah,
what the mom wants is kind of the crux of everything.
Right. The hopes and desires of the mother are the key point in both cases.
It really is. Like, I feel like he of course is not aware of this hypocrisy. But the entire article is basically about his feelings.
Yep.
It's about how he has seen, sonograms and seen fetuses and seen them sucking their thumbs, and how that really made him feel torn. How it made him change his political opinion on this issue. On this issue that does not affect him directly in any way, and the ruling on it would affect, as we have already talked about, millions, tens of millions of women. But because he, a man, feels kind of bad about it now, that should probably inform all of us, right? We should all feel torn about it. We shouldn't actually ask the women, because he doesn't really mention any women that he's talked to. He doesn't quote any women. He just talks about women he's encountered who happen to be vessels for the issue that he's trying to
I don't believe
examine.
that woman...
Yeah, who definitely exist in exactly the form you described and agree with him on his position.
He doesn't even have anecdotal evidence. He doesn't even say, I once got a girl pregnant and was queasy, in college, and was queasy when she said I want an abortion because I don't want to have a kid right now. He doesn't even say that. He doesn't even come up with a good myth to inform his politics.
He also laughably blurs the line between personal religious belief and actually coherent political values for the entire country by going, when does a person become a person? I believe that all human beings have some piece of themselves that has no size, shape, color, or weight, but gives them infinite value and dignity, and it's their soul.
Yeah, he's just
To me, the crucial question is when a living organism becomes a soul, my intuition, so this is intuition about religion, this has to do with whether people have civil rights, is that it's not a moment, but a process shrouded in divine mystery. This is the reasoning that someone's having for whether or not women should have human rights.
Shove your divine mystery up your fucking asshole.
Yeah, it's really incredibly Like, I don't like.
Should we have guns? It's a divine mystery.
Yeah. Should we free the slaves? It's a process. There's some souls involved. I don't know. I think it's a little too radical. Like, it's always a little too radical when people want basic human dignity, isn't it? For these kinds of people, like the step too far was being a human and having basic rights.
I mean, and he like, obviously we know that this isn't where he was going, but he almost kind of, if you were like really optimistic, the sentence just before where you started, Alex, almost seems like he might be on the right path.
Yeah.
Does that mean I know where life begins? That no longer seems like the right question. Yeah, that's not the question. That's not what's important.
It's not the question.
Am I blowing smoke? Yes.
Do I know where life begins? No. Let me tell you where I think it begins, though.
Am I just on a random stream of consciousness? Yes. Like, he's just bullshitting.
He also argues as though the fact that a lot of Americans are cross-pressured about this issue should determine whether or not we have civil rights. It's like me, like so many other Americans, have bad politics and haven't really figured their shit out on this because they've been propagandized too effectively.
And we need to be allowed to enforce our views on people that we have nothing to do with.
What if we created a theo-fascist state like, Ireland in the 50s, or like half the Muslim countries, where you don't have basic human rights because of a religious preference that becomes the state rule?
And remember, you have to assimilate to this.
It would be much more comfortable for a lot of middle-class geriatric men who haven't been able to figure their shit out on this obvious question for their entire lives because they're idiots if women didn't have civil rights. That would be very helpful to my conscience. That's what he's saying. It's not. I'm not even like paraphrasing. That's literally what he's saying. Like, I would be unhappy. I would be uncomfortable if women had full civil rights.
Yeah, he says at the end, I would feel better if we just kind of like left this up to the states. Let's just be done with it. Let's be done with Roe.
Yeah,
I'd feel better if we could solve this political issue.
Once again, brings up that political culture is ruled by polarized minorities. Stop.
Yeah.
That's just diversion, man.
I'm. You know what, Alex? I regret allowing you to bring this asshole on the podcast.
We've read much more evil people, but he's very offensive.
But we might have to put a moratorium on David Brooks. This is so dumb. See, like, it's not just
idiotic
dumb
and ghoulish.
It's not like it's not on the maximally dumb, but it's not on the maximally evil. It's like it's really stretching those face meters on the creative character. It is just, it's hideous. It's Cthulhian. It's unspeakable. Like,
yeah, and he calls his political position humdrum. It like that with the stakes that we're talking about. That's just so. It just
callousness.
Yeah,
callous feelings he has for humans is inhumane. I mean, he barely qualifies here as a human being. His view of, he has zero sympathy and empathy. It's really just, how does it make me feel?
In contrast, like a week ago, also, he repeatedly laments that the majority is not going to get its way on this, even though, according to his own logic, they will, because abortion is going to be restricted.
But according to his other logic,
according to his other article, there's no majorities. How are there suddenly majorities again, Brooks? Which is it? What the fuck are we? Are we a bunch of white genocided fucking far right ideological imbeciles who think that we're minorities now and we're all fucking wimpy and pathetic because we don't have a settler colony that's permanently wasps? Or are we a silent majority, which you're clearly ripping off with your ambivalent majority rhetoric because you're suddenly not a Reaganite because you don't like Trump? And we need to have that huge majority of people who are uncomfortable by abortion decide that women can't get abortions. Like, he's all the fuck over the place.
I also think it's notable, since it comes up so often in these discussions, that he's very careful to never examine cases of rape.
Nope.
It does not come up.
No, it's too messy.
Yeah, exactly.
Just as a thought experiment, I almost, how remember when Christopher Hitchens was like, I don't see the big deal about waterboarding, and then he took the Pepsi challenge and he actually got it done. He's like, God, okay, this is torture, no mas. And he lasted 5 seconds.
Well, it's because someone who, despite having plenty of questionable political positions, actually had integrity.
Right, but because he was actually an actual ideologue who believed in his ideology entirely. But my point, in fact, to the detriment, actually, like with the rat. But my point is, I want people to come up with, I don't know how, it's like a VR thing or like some way to get old white men who are anti-abortion to go just experience 9 months of going through pregnancy. And
I thought you were going to say to waterboard David Brooks. I was like,
No, I'm saying I would like I would like to hear the perspective of a guy who's been anti-abortion his whole life, essentially simulate going through a pregnancy and just how miserable it can be, and just how much of like, oh my god, this is changing my entire life forever, and then see if they might change their mind. Because people often change their mind when they are forced to go through it.
It gets back to something that Aiden said at the very beginning I wanted to mention, which is that if he had had a large enough tummy ache, I think he would have been pro-abortion. Like, because everything's just about his personal experience, and if he really understood how bad the tummy ache could be,
oh my god,
while you're an underage girl carrying an incestuous child of rape, like so many of these cases in the South,
I solved it.
Yeah, then he might say, "Hey, I really don't like this tummy ache. We should have abortion."
We need a scheme to slowly slip more calcium into his diet. And we need him to develop
in Minecraft.
We need him to develop absolutely abysmal kidney stones. And then when he can pass those, he can have an epiphany on his own, which is, this is kind of like what giving birth might feel like. Maybe I didn't like that. Maybe I shouldn't force women to do this. But I'm imagining like in Watchmen, like Ozymandias is spoilers, by the way. Ozymandias is slipping in the movie, slipping like cancer gas through the vents of all of Dr. Manhattan's friends, so that they all get cancer, and everyone blames Dr. Manhattan on it because he's a giant like.
Wait, did that happen in the movie? I missed that.
Yeah, that's the whole premise of how Wally, whatever his face, got cancer.
Jesus Christ!
Ozymandias like blackmailed him the whole, not blackmailed, but like framed him the whole time. Yeah. But my point is, we just need to like have people, instead of poison capsules, just get out extra calcium in all of David Brooks' meals, so he gets brutal kidney stones.
It's
parody
in Minecraft, yeah.
It's devious.
So as much as we may all wish that he had kidney stones, I don't think it's going to happen in time to stop a 6-3 Supreme Court that he's clearly so unhappy about. How could this 6-3 Supreme Court that's almost certainly going to strike down fundamental civil liberties happen? How did the radical left and radical right having tensions between each other's totally equivalent positions cause this to happen?
No, he's compromising though. He wants them to keep it legal for the first trimester.
Yeah.
This is divine punishment for all those uncomfortable Thanksgiving conversations.
You got 3 months, motherfuckers.
Yeah. So he, in his divine beneficence, he has offered this incredibly trivial amount of time in which most people don't even realize they're pregnant to suddenly get an abortion, which is, as overseer and creator of the world, God David Brooks, that was very generous of him.
Yeah. His compromise is, he thinks, he's not sure still, he might land on 15 weeks as the limit for abortions.
Yeah.
An amount that leaves many people, weeks to decide, or they might not even know at that point to decide what they want to do with this life-changing decision.
Once again, the comments, the top comment absolutely roasts him, and then we've got a bunch of little baby David Brookses commenting on that, shitting on the woman who says "fuck you."
You got a snippet from the top comment you want to share?
Yeah, let me find it.
We've now entered the meta commentary.
It's bound to happen.
Any random fucking comment from the thing is going to be smarter than David Brooks, including the people trying to mirror David Brooks.
Yeah, so the top comment from this woman who just goes by K. I had an abortion in my mid-20s and had zero ambivalence or regret. Before discovering I was pregnant, my birth control, the now defunct cervical sponge, failed. I had broken off with the father because he was a cocaine addict who treated me poorly. The idea that I might have been forced to bear that man's child fills me with horror. The prospect that my adult daughters might be less self-determined, have less self-determination than I had 35 years ago shocks me to the core. We are in the maw of minority rule by anti-democratic authoritarian Christians whose religious beliefs should have no bearing on anyone's life but their own. Your hand-wringing is a feeble response to a very real threat. And then we've got a bunch of 17 replies, people going, well, but actually, David Brooks talking about I'm gonna suck your dick.
Yeah. No, that's completely correct. It's not quite as vicious as we were, but it's exactly correct. He has absolutely no bearing upon this issue whatsoever, other than to say, I support people whose civil liberties are being challenged, and he couldn't even do that.
Second comment lights him on fire, too. In a perfect world, there would be no rape, incest, abusive partners, poverty, failed relationship, lack of health insurance, unreliable birth control, mental illness, homelessness, ectopic pregnancies, catastrophic birth defects, broken promises, conflicting responsibilities, or human error. Until then, we need abortion rights. Got him!
Yeah.
Fucking New York Times readers are filling me with hope.
Yeah, well, they're despairing of what their paper has become. So I guess
third one's on Eden's side. Your personal struggle on an issue is precisely why it should be the choice of those intimately involved. So exactly what Zayden said.
So before we devolve into a literal like Reddit thread, I think we're gonna sign off here. I do apologize for bringing not one but two David Brooks columns into your life, but just be aware this is something that I read almost every week to mine for garbage. So
keep in mind those 3 comments lit him on fire. There's 2,200 of them.
Yeah, keep in mind that he, as Alex has said, he is a perceived respected member of the commentary elite, and this is the pathetic, harmful garbage he spits out.
Yeah, definitely someone who you should see as the enlightened middle position on issues.
We gotta find a way to use this totally unrelated art that he used.
I guess the aspirational part is that if you too can graduate from an elite institution, you can also get a cushy op-ed job eventually.
Yeah, as long as you don't actually help people.
And slowly develop brain disease that makes you think you're God King Xerxes.
As long as you are a spineless, amoral monster.
Yep.
And on that note,
life goals. Anyway, we will catch you next time with hopefully a less intense episode.
Oh, it will be. Don't worry.
But that's up to Jason. Take care.
I'm going to bed.
Adios.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.